We thought it was going to go straight into going live, and we do apologise for this because we have, in fact, just found out with regards to the fact this stream was not live, and we sincerely apologise for that in the fact that we thought it would go straight live on in. That's an error on my part here, and that's the rawness of me, but that's why we have a pre-season event to work through all of these. And, well, as we do head towards the end of qualifying, and, well, we are finally live with the broadcast here, well, we are going to be only moments away from going to what will be the grid for our first of 2 races of the day. And it is going to be, excuse me, with regards to what is our first of our pre-season sprint races here at the Red Bull Ring. But it is Peter Duke who has taken what has been that pole position by 29.538. And meanwhile, it will be that it is going to be there Adil Chowdhury, who takes the EVO pole position there, albeit in fact we are going to be seeing another lap here being set by Luis Piero. He's going to go back out there, so he does have 1 lap left available to him. Have this out lap and then 1 more lap, but as he makes his way on around, it is going to be one of the situations whereby he's going to have everything left to the last gasp lap. I do apologise, ladies and gentlemen, from the science. Just confirming with the rest of the admin team right now the reason as to why the stream was not live. And again, that's 100% on me as your commentator and broadcaster, not on the wider Evolution Sim Racing administration team there, all because of me forgetting to click a button. As the drivers make their way on around here, and well, we do say hello there to a number of you in the YouTube chat, as it looks though Luis Piero, they're parking up and ending his qualifying session, or what will be a conclusion of the session shortly. We do say hello to Rod, Chantal Plurger, also Katie, Kitty Eames, Predescu Dennis, and also Stephen Wilkinson. All of you tuning in, and to all of you guys and girls tuning in at home on YouTube, on the Evolution Sim Racing YouTube channel. And well, if you haven't said hi, don't be shy, feel free to say hi. And well, we are only moments away from going to what will be green flag racing, because this qualifying session comes to close. And well, as we can see, taking that pole position will be Peter Duke in the 177, absolutely dominant form. They're the only 29 set, with Jan Osterberg line up alongside in what will be P2 in the Porsche 992. And then further down the order, starting on pole for the Evo drivers, albeit P23 overall, will be Adil Chowdhury for the Verano Academy drivers. We say hello there to Crofty 232692 as well. Getting into Crofty, and I hope you're doing well. And we'll say hello to Billy right there. And we're qualifying right now, only seconds away. And I think we're just all patiently waiting for what is that qualifying session to come to a close. And Liam Fraser being parked up there, and I think letting the photographers take a few photos of the Porsche 992. Always good to see there. And of course, the Porsche 911 going through multiple iterations over the course of its history, and well, in its latest guides right now. But Fraser decides to put the car into the pit lane, and well, that means qualifying is over, ladies and gentlemen, and it's time to head to the grid for our first of 2 races today. And as our drivers make their way to the grid, this is how they'll line up for what is the first of our pre-season event races. Peter Duke lines up on pole there for the DDK racing team, ahead of Jan Osterberg for Sheep Valley Racing. We then have on row number 2, Craig Taylor ahead of James Horworth, with row number 3 being contested by Menno Blum and Mark de Vries. On row number 4, starting P7, it's Henry Coolan, the Dutchman ahead of the Briton of Liam Fraser, and then Rob McKee and Adam Baker complete your top 10. Outside of them, starting P11, best rest is Jim Fox ahead of Christopher Starsmore, with row number 7 going to Denny Pluger and Nick Stubb. Then we have Dean Sheesby and what is John Ludbrook starting on your 8th row of the grid. Matthew Croft and Klaas Vellen starting on row number 9, and your top 20 completed by Scott Kostrick and Andre Montine, who has just literally moved to what is the Premier Class from Evo just prior to this event getting underway. Starting P21 is going to be Robin Aston ahead of Dale Williams. P23 is where you'll find your pole sitter in what is the Evo class of Adil Chowdhury, with Ross Norsworthy starting P24. Grant Miller begins his day P25 ahead of Craig Tillerson, with Christian Malaskov starting P27 ahead of Mark Parkhurst. Your Your top 30 is completed by Sander Tabbers and Steve Rubino, ahead of Danny Weir and Ricardo Luis Piera. And then we do have Sean Clark and Rob Gregg on row number 17, ahead of Dominique Baquis and Jason Haddington. Gary Newton and Mark Wesley start on row number 19, and your top 40 is completed by John Zev Smith and Daniel Paul. We then have on what is row number 21, last but not least, our two drivers, and that will be Pete Piver and what is none other than Robert Noble. So 42 drivers in attendance here today, and that's wonderful to see out of what is our attendee list of the best part of 60 drivers in all. And well, as our drivers get ready to go racing, and everyone absolutely set and ready to go charging, I can tell you one thing, ladies and gentlemen, this is going to be a split pre-season event where whilst there's no points up for grabs, everyone is going to be very eager to try and make that best possible impression. And with all of our drivers in position on the grid, well, it's over to the formation lap behind our Porsche safety car, and well, Peter Jute will be the driver who leads the drivers away behind the safety car, and the next time they come around, he will be the man who takes us all to the green for 30 minutes of racing in race number 1 of the day. Makes his way on away here, and all the drivers gradually pulling on through. Well, we look a little bit further down the order from our race leader, or our pole sitter, to James Horsworth, who starts in P3, jumping on board there, the Ford Mustang, a car which we talked about earlier, the DXT Motorsports car, which is a lot about the straight line speed and also its stability over the curbs, and also, of course, that wonderful sonorous roar of a classic Coyote 5.4 litre V8 engine, 5 litres on the road, but the bore stroke opened up to 5.4 litres, if my memory serves me correctly, for the purposes of GT3 racing. And as he makes his way underway and up the rise, well, right now Horworth, I should say, looking all set and ready to go, and absolutely itching to go charges. He makes his way up the hill, but of course right now it's all about just getting the tyre temperatures up there and also those brake temperatures as best as humanly possible. Further down the order, as the field makes his way on through, Rob Gregg and Sean Clark, two Porsches line up side by side in what will be that 17th row. The two Evo drivers there, all set and ready to go, and surrounded by a few Porsches from the Premier class as well. And well, as they all make their way up the rise here, and everyone coming to a very gradual, a very glacial drive through turn number 3 this time around, the AMS AG corner. But next time around it is going to be all about what will be the run on through and the hard and fast breaking through there. And as the drivers come on around, well, they'll be knowing that that corner is definitely going to be one of the overtaking opportunities of the race circuit, but it's also going to be one of those corners whereby it's very easy to make a mistake. But if you're sitting a little bit further back, as we jump aboard here with Robert Nobles in the Acura NSX Evo GT3 22 machine, well, starting all the way down in P40 overall, P10 in Evo class, he'll know that he's going to try and find places, pick up the scraps where drivers get it wrong, and it's always a place at the Red Bull Ring where mistakes can happen very easily into turn 1 and also into turn number 3. Of course, we don't want to see any of that. They want, or alternatively, they want to get the skeletons out of the closet before we head into round number 1 in a week's time. But in the meantime, Robert Nobles just following on through here, and as he makes his way up the rise in towards Power Horse Corner, it's all going to be about going to the green as soon as he possibly can and going on the attack. But meanwhile, as we ride back on board with Peter Duke, the DDK Racing Team, well, this is the man, of course, who put it on pole by half a second. It seems like a huge margin, but will he be winning by a huge margin after 30 minutes of racing? Race number 1 of our 2 races of the day. We all get as good as mine, ladies and gentlemen, as we come into the final couple of corners, and it is going to be to Peter Duke to take us to green flag racing. Lights out and away we go for the first half pre-season race as Duke gets underway, but look at Jan Osterberg attacking left, attacking right. He can't find a way fully around, so he settles back to the racing line as the field make the way into turn 1. It's going to be a close concertina effect here, plenty of 2 wides, one driver squeezed the wall. That's Denny Pluger, who ended up into the wall almost there, but I think just missing it and riding over the apex curve quite sharply as they brawl the way up the rise. All the best part here of what's going to be 20,000 GT3 horsepower roaring the way up the hill, and as they do, Jan Osterberg right now, the pressure, there's contact between Osterberg and Taylor, and Craig Taylor in the end carries on through. The whole field now is going to have to deal with a Porsche stricken as the field segregates its way on around, and meanwhile further back there's a couple of bumpers coming off of cars there as they come into contact, but it looks as though, oh goodness me, I was about to say the road's cleared, and Osberg in the end end up being collected again there, that time by a Ferrari in the form, I believe, of not Adel Chowdhury, he's in the McLaren. We couldn't quite see who that Ferrari was, but it's been a bit of a nightmare there for a couple of drivers as they come through turn 3. But meanwhile, as the field now begins to calm down, or at least for a brief moment, we do look a little bit further up the order to Christopher Starsmore. And Starsmore here in the Ferrari 296. The Simcast driver under a bit of pressure from Nick Stubb as they come out of turn 6 in towards 7. And as they roar the way on down here, well, right now, Stubb and Fox quite close to the back of the 1110 Ferrari. And well, it's looking as though all three drivers here starting to fall a little bit off the lead pack. But then again, it's only lap number 1. We've still got plenty of time and plenty of laps to accrue. And we'll try and get a replay where we can of what exactly happened in towards turn number 3. That is a big, big sideways moment. That's Liam Fraser who's gone sideways there and practically into the pit lane. He's going to have to drive into the pit lane to turn the car around. Going to have to be careful about that one. He won't want to pick up a black flag for driving backwards too far. But meanwhile, one driver's going forwards all the way. It's Peter Duke as he leads after lap number 1. Behind him is none other than Craig Taylor, P2. Then it's James Hallworth, P3. Mark DeVries, P4. Ahead of Rob McKee, P5. Adam Bacon, P6. Henry Coolan, P7. Ahead of Christopher Starswell, P8. Nick Stubb, P9. And Jim Fox, P10. And well, as he tries to make the way on through, the Premier Class driver trying to push onwards as much as he can. But look at the battle here. Starswell having to defend. Stubb looking around the outside. The Mercedes making its power on the straights known. Dive on the brakes, meanwhile, that is going to be Sheesby looking up the inside of Jim Fox behind. So it's 2 by 2 as they come, and it's not Noah's Ark right now. It's GT3's at Red Bull Ring for the Evolution Sim Racing GT3 Championship. And as they roar the way down in towards where it's turn number 4, well, it is going to be Stubb who gets ahead of Starswell, who hasn't got the straight line pace in that Ferrari compared to the Mercedes. But it's not just about what is our Premier driver. Also think about our Evo drivers, and here's your Evo leader of Grant Miller right now, who's taken that lead in the Ford Mustang, and he's not let go of it so far. And in fact, Miller's made 1 place up compared to his Rolls, and I believe Adil Chowdhury was caught up in that open lap instant, who was your pole sitter in the Evo class, has fallen a long way down for Runner Academy. And we will get a replay of that when we can. We're still waiting on that replay footage to be fed on through, but we will get it in due course, and when we do, we'll be able to tell a bit of a story as to what exactly happened and all the tears and drama that followed after it. But as the field continues to push onwards here, well, meanwhile, looking further back, Daniel Poole versus Jordan Zev Smith. It's the battle of the Britain versus the Americans as they head up towards what will be turn of 9. Does he look for a move? He thinks about it, does. One is Zev Smith, and in the end, Smith not quite able to find it, and has to back off there as the 2 drivers in equal machinery. When it comes down to the driver and the setup they're running on the car as they come out of turn 10 and onwards towards turn number 1. As they head on to another lap, roaring the way and through, where it is all about pushing forward here for all the drivers. And we have 2 drivers in the pit lane in the form of Luis Piera and also Rubino. So therefore it's been a difficult start to some drivers. And well, meanwhile, we do look back at what exactly happened at the race start, and here is the replay, ladies and gentlemen. And this was heading up the rise in towards turn 3. It was between Jan Usberg and what was Craig Taylor at the time. Usberg on the outside, Taylor hard on the brakes. Usberg turning across there with Taylor on his inside, and well, that camera angle would suggest, and then we did see the banging of what was Menno Blum's Ferrari that we saw that got turned around, but it would suggest that Pat Usberg not recognising Taylor was fully alongside and trying to turn in to close the issue, and then it was Blum and Usberg coming together again, and Adil Chowdhury just ends up being what's collateral damage at the scene of the incident. So that explains the story. Let's return to live racing, ladies and gentlemen, and as we do, well, we do seem to have returned to a scenic view for a brief moment. Our cameramen enjoying what is the scenery when they should be enjoying the racing, and well, none other than what is Nick Stubb we come back to here as he makes his way on around, and as he does so, well, he was able to find that move only moments ago, and Christopher Starsmore and Jim Fox both falling back. Henry Coolan has dropped down to P8 as well, so Stubb making some rapid progress here, and Coolan losing a little bit of space and places as Stubb runs a bit wide. He's got to be careful those off tracks, because otherwise they will potentially lead to a drive-through penalty at some point later on in the race. He keeps picking up on the Red Bull Ring. Is no stranger to track limit infringements. But as we look from where's our Premier class to our Evo class here, well, we do see Mark Parkhurst over the back of Rob Craig as it's the battle of the 2 Porsches, with a Honda that also wants to try and get involved, or an Acura that wants to get involved, as they make the way up here. And we ride on board here with what is your 4th place driver in the Evo class of Robert Nobles, and well, Nobles here having a run, not quite close enough, as we did see Dominic Marquis trying to look for a move there in what is the rear view television camera. And as they head up the rise, the drivers right now absolutely on the attack as much as they can, and well, that battle box there just showing you exactly where they fit into their running order with each other respectively. And well, right now it is Parkhurst looking for that opportunity, can't, or Nobles looking for that opportunity, can't quite find it. Parkhurst having to go a little bit defensive on the inside there. Craig Tillerson, what is the Premier driver, all caught up in the midst of the fighting as they make the way on through in towards what will be turn number 4, and down they they go. And what you can see there, Tillotson in the Corvette C8R will be absolutely swarmed, or the Z06 to give it its official designation. Meanwhile, there's been a bit of contact there to the inside of what was Robert Nobles, I believe, or in fact a little bit Moan and Parkhurst enjoying the fighting here, but Nobles is going to go around the outside of Parkhurst now as they make the way into Powerhouse corner, and as they come through the left-hander, well, Nobles going all in here to try and make this move happen. Parkhurst still there on the inside now to go defensive, and that is going to buy breathing room to both Rob Gregg and further up the road Grant Miller. But meanwhile, you're going to get a big traffic jam of cars now start to form here as they head upwards towards, oh goodness me, what on earth's happened in the rear of the picture? That's Dean Sheesby, who's been absolutely ejected out into the gravel coming out of turns 7 and 8, and onwards he goes, and with it a front bumper that's almost hanging loose on the car, so a nightmare. And there's, in fact, I think somebody's been speared off the road coming through turn number 9. There's a bit of drama everywhere we look. I believe Liam Fraser might have been caught up in another bit of an incident there. Not quite sure. We'll see if we can get a replay of what's happened. But I can tell you one thing right now, a few drivers there getting their elbows out and not in the happiest of ways. But meanwhile, whilst all this is playing out, we also look to Pete Piper and where's Jan Österberg as these two trying to really recover their race at this point. Well, Piper had a difficult qualifying session. Meanwhile, Österberg, by comparison, put it on the front row of the grid, but has ended up being promoted all the way towards the back of the grid. Well, he's made his way ahead so far, but it's going to be Piper who's just watching behind as they head up the hill and in towards turn number 3. Onto the brakes they go, and as they do, well, Mark Wesley, meanwhile, in the Porsche, holding off Jordan Zev Smith as hard as he possibly can, but the Mustang says, no, you don't, and that's going to be a muscle car race versus what is the eloquence of the Porsche, all the way down towards turn number 4, and well, it looks as though American Muscle does win here unless we see some bravery under braking from Wesley. We don't quite do so in the end. The number 94 there of Zed Smith in the DeWalt machine makes his way on through and gains another place, moving up to P8 in the EVO class. We've looked further down the running order. Let's look back up to the front of the field, and here is your race leader as he comes towards the end of his 5th tour of the circuit under race conditions, and Peter Duke just gradually pulling away. 2.5 seconds is now the gap to Craig Taylor, and the McLaren 720 EVO driver just not quite able to hang with him at this time, but there's still plenty more over the distance. Now it only takes one mistake to bring it all back together, and James Horworth meanwhile completing that top 3 as it's 3 different manufacturers and 3 very different styles of car in what is the top 3 places, the Premier Class and Oval at the moment, and there's still more to come in this race before all is said and done. As the drivers roar the way up the rise and in towards turn number 3. Well, meanwhile, one driver who right now will be enjoying a little bit of a fun moment will be Grant Miller, who you can see there in what is the Ford Mustang, but behind him there's another bit of American muscle, and that is in the form of the Corvette Z06 GT3 of Sander Tabbers, and Tabbers being a very lonely Corvette at the moment inside the top 20, but meanwhile, speaking of loneliness or not being lonely, that is an interesting move up the inside by the Ferrari 296 of Ros Norsworthy, looking up the inside of none other than Denny Plöger, and Plöger, who was squeezed the inside wall at the start of the race into turn number 1 as they come on down in towards turn number 4. Onto the brakes they go here, and Plöger still there on the outside, albeit it's going to be Norsworthy on the inside here in the Simcast machine. They're going to carry on too wide, but in the end the Dutchman runs a bit wide, and Ros Norsworthy just through commitment, sheer commitment, makes the plays count. Danny Weir meanwhile now is going to try and go around the outside of Plöger, and will be able to do so. There were a bit of gravel on the tyres of Plöger. I wouldn't be surprised there if we decide to back off in order to just be able to protect the car and move on to the next lap. I think there's going to be a bit more fighting between these drivers over the course of the remaining laps before all is said and done. And meanwhile, coming from a bit of a lonely Corvette to a very lonely Lamborghini Huracan Evo GT3, one of the only ones on this grid, I do believe, if not in the entire one, is 100 plus entrants of both splits of the GT3 series. And well, as we do see what is there none other than Wellen making the way on through. In fact, Wellen's picked up an automated slowdown, and that's an automated penalty there for track limits coming out the final corner. So Wellen's going to have to give up the places, and that is going to be pain, no doubt about it. But meanwhile, looking from a class Wellen, who's going to drop behind Scott Costry and Robin Aston. We'll look a bit further up the road here, and here comes a potential move. It could be 3 wide almost, as it's going to be Williams versus Croft versus Coolen. Coolen in, where's the Acura watching on, as that is going to be Croft there in the Porsche, who's now got Coolen all the way up the inside, so Matthew Croft trying to hold on, and he's going to use the sausage curve there in order to try and settle the car down as they make the way down the rise now in towards turn number 4, and it's Porsche power versus Acura power, and as they come on down, it's going to be, by looks of things, Croft is going to be ahead at least by a nose under braking, and indeed he's going to lead by braking here to hold on to P9 overall. And in the Premier class, there's a little bit of dust kicked up there by Dale Williams, who ran slightly wide And coming out of what was turn number 4 and into 5, that's not going to cost him any time. Mercedes can just power through, but Matthew Croft are definitely right now in that mindset, which is he's got to try and keep his head down and push on as much as he can. As we say hello to definitely a Matthew Croft fan there in the YouTube chat of Davey Jensen, and we'll get into Davey. I hope you're doing well. But meanwhile, coming to more battles further up the order, this is side by side between Nick Stubb and Adam Baker, and I believe Stubb has just found his way through in towards Jochen Brink corner, but it's not over yet because here comes Baker on the counter attack as they make the way up the rise. We ride on board. That's how close he's getting to the car in front of the fact. You can practically look inside it as they make the way in towards turn number 1, and we're coming up the rise. It's going to be a back out there for Baker, getting a little bit too close for good measure and trying to put some mental pressure on Stubb, but in return costing himself the run out towards AMSJG at turn number 3. As they come up the rise and in towards the right-hander, where it's all now going to be about what will be Baker looking to go on that attack once again, but he'll probably leave it to the second half of the lap. As we can see, they're getting very close on corner exit out of turn number 3, but the problem is here for the fact that Baker, as much as he would like to go on the attack, it's not quite working out at this time as they make the way on down. As they come down and in towards what will be turn number 4. Well, everything calms down for a brief moment between them, but it hasn't calmed down further down the order, still within the Premier class, and we look to what is that three-way fight here between Fox, Coolan and Croft, and well, in the end, Jim Fox, I think, thinking on the one hand, yes, he could go for the move. I think thinking on the other hand, in fact, it may not be worth it because I'd have John Ludbrook and also Andre Montine both looking for moves on me in return, and therefore having to play the game of better be safe than sorry. And well, it's a difficult one here when you are running a long line of cars, and the fact that you could very quickly find yourself falling back into a battle with the rest of the cars in the class that are behind you and leaving the leaders just to simply run away. And that's the last thing you want to do at the end of the day, no doubt about it. But time continues to trickle away here. We've still got plenty of laps to come. And the Red Bull ring is meanwhile, Fox says it's time to go for it into the Jochen Ring curve on the inside of Henry Coolan. And well, the Acura driver holds the outside, runs a little bit deep. It's too wide then into A1 at turn number 10. As they come out of the corner, well, here comes Ludbrook, here comes Montine. They're all starting to build up the speed. It's going to be 3 wide almost there, but in fact, in the end, Ludbrook decides to back out, but then he's got Montine directly on his outside as they come into, well, inside, I should say, as they make their way into turn number 1. The Acura driver's not going to back out here, and as they go on through, well, in the end, it's going to be Ludbrook who runs a little bit wide, but he'll get away with that for the time being. But here comes Robin Aston now. Aston says, okay, if you two guys are going to play, I want to play as well. And as they head up the rise, well, Aston's going to look around the outside, and meanwhile, in the middle of the road, it's going to be Ludbrook, defends one way, then defends the other. Well, he's got to pick a line in the end, and so he does, and now it's going to be Montine with Aston around the outside, with Ludbrook just simply trying to pull away here and give the toe to each of them. As there's been an error for Klaas Vellen, and he's into the wall and takes 2 drivers with him, but hold the phone on that one because meanwhile, as they make the way down towards turn number 4, it's side by side here between Montine and Aston. Aston on the outside in the Porsche for the SimCube door banner, and meanwhile, as they make the way through what is turns number 4 and in towards 5, a little bit of run wide then. That's going to give Montine the better traction out of turn number 4. It's not over yet as they exit Remus into Power Horse curve at turn number 6, and in Andre Montine just about gets back ahead, but goodness me, what brilliant battling between the two of them. Neither driver wanting to give up, but in the end, Andre Montine in the Acura just able to hold on enough in order to be able to conserve at P13. But look at the gap it's gifted to Ludbrook, a second almost there, and well, meanwhile, Ludbrook's now looking ahead to him, thinking, okay, there's an opportunity to get involved with Coolan and Fox, who decide to go toe-to-toe once again, as it is going to be a move up the inside there for Henry Coolan. Fox runs all the way out wide. Well, there, I think he's decided to let the car run wide for the simple reason he doesn't want to cause an instant between the two of them into turn number 9. But he's got to be careful about doing that. Do that too often, and you will incur the wrath of what will be the stewards with drive-through penalty as they make the way out the rise in towards turn number 1. Well, Fox on the inside of the McLaren here, and Fox very eager to make a pass, and he'll get it done. But now Ludbrook's going to try and get close here and look for an opportunity of his own as we ride on board with the Porsche 992 driver in the 114, and the KMG GP2 Porsche driver right now close, but not close enough to look for that potential move. But you can see just in front, Fox having to fend off another attack here from what is Coolan. It's Coolan looking around the outside. He's going to go all for it. That's going to put him very deep. And here comes Ludbrook. Ludbrook just simply says, well, if you're going to leave the door that wide open, allow me to investigate. And as they come out of the hairpin and down the hill they go, brilliant racing between these 3 drivers right now. Absolutely fair and respectful all the way through. Coolan versus Ludbrook, however. Ludbrook on the inside in the black and yellow Porsche. Meanwhile, Coolan around the outside there in the red and blue Acura. And well, Coolan's got the outside line. And whilst the Porsche is the better car in the corners typically, Coolan, meanwhile, with the outside line, is just able to take more power out of it. And they come down through the left-hander of turn at what is number 6. And these 2 drivers right now not giving in at all. And that's enabling Fox just to simply run away there up into P10. But the battle for P11, the right to be the best of the rest. Well, if you take away one of the ones in the number 11, you think it's number 1. They're battling as if it's over victory, and we can understand why. They're enjoying an absolutely brilliant ding-dong scrap, and we love to see it as they come down towards turn number 9. They head onto the brakes. Now here comes Robin Aston, who wants to become player free in the situation, and Aston waiting for his turn here, trying to play the game, which is be tactical, be smart, and make the attack when the time is right, because if he doesn't, then he'll find himself queuing up with Scott Kostrik and Andre Montine all closing up behind him. And meanwhile, looking a bit further behind them, we do have a Ferrari of Ross Northworthy looking to try and make a move here, trying to give himself as much space versus Danny Weir. Weir, of course, being the driver promoted from what was EVO to Premier as a result of his championship crown in Season 7, and we're already starting to stick it to his Premier rivals. And as they make the way up the rides, it's absolutely neck and neck between the two of them here, as it is going to be just by an inch by looks things. Northworthy getting to that inside line into turn number 3. Onto the brakes they go. We know the Porsche is better on the brakes, but the Ferrari is very stable on corner exit, and that Ferrari is just able to tear away as Weir has to go deep. But here comes Sander Tabbers, and Tabbers right now thinks about potentially looking for a move on the inside in turn, trying to get ahead of the Porsche of Weir as they come down towards the braking zone for Remus. It's rubbing doors between the two of them, but the Porsche able to brake a little bit later, but Tabbers says no you don't, and absolutely squeezes his way to the inside there, makes sure to keep the door open. And while the Corvette gets ahead in the 128, but he's still got Weir looking to hang on his inside into Power Horse corner. They're giving each other racing room. They come down through the left-hander, and Tabbers right now looking all the way around the outside. Can he find the move? The answer is no, he can't in the end, and at long last he has to give him for a brief moment, or does he? And yes, he does, because Danny Weir says, no, you do not, and puts the door firmly shut. But here comes Tabbers once again, who says, yes, I do. But will he be able to? Will he be able to get alongside into Jochen Rindt corner? And no, he can't. He's just not quite there, and he has to find yield. But what a battle to run for actually what was 2/3 of the entire lap after Northworthy's initial pass on Weir. And Sander Tabbers right now, I don't think he's done. I think he's got the bit between his teeth as we look back from the rear of what is the 195 of Danny Weir coming in towards turn number 1, and well, it's going to be up the long train of cars right now as they exit out initially, but making the way up towards turn number 3. And the DXT Motorsports driver here, he won't have any more speed to play with. He hasn't got a toe to really work with, so therefore it's going to be now, how can he work against Tabbers? And the answer is, well, Sander Tabbers is going to go up the inside. It's going to be a repeat of the previous lap, except Tabbers gets it, stops on a dime, and in the end just manages to get it through the apex in time. And it's Danny Weir who drops the place, but to be fair, he can't grumble because he enjoyed a brilliant battle. And we've seen plenty of battling between our Premier drivers. What about our EVO drivers, I hear you ask? Well, we've got some fighting going on here as well, and the fact that the battle for the lead of what is the EVO class is actually getting closer and closer. Grant Miller, you saw him there briefly in the camera shot, my cameraman focuses on him. Grant Miller's dropped all the way down to P20 in terms of the overall running, and well, with that he's only got with the Premier driver Christian Malskov between himself and then the trio of nobles, Greg and Parkhurst, all one is EVO drivers, and that is your top 4 separated effectively by 2 seconds when you eliminate Malskov from the equation. So therefore Miller, I think he's been enjoying a relatively sensible showing of pace right now, but also he'll know in the fact that if Malskov gets past him or starts fighting him, he's going to end up losing out, and he will be forced backwards to fight what will be for the victory of the EVO class in the closing 11.5 minutes of this race. So therefore he cannot take his foot off the pedal whatsoever in that Ford Mustang. He is going to have to continue to work it all the way to the very end. We briefly lose him to the immaterial ether, and he returns from it, and well, as they make the way up the rise, well, meanwhile we look a little bit further back to Greg versus Parkhurst. And I do wonder right now whether Nobles, Greg and Parkhurst are all thinking the same thing, which is, you know what, perhaps we should work together for a brief moment, even if we're all part of the same team. Let's work together, get closer to Miller and turn it into a 4-way fight for the win. But of course, saying it is one thing, having it happen is another. And speaking of what is EVO fighting, well, you wouldn't be surprised to see where's Gareth Newton versus Mark Wesley. These two still fighting each other, as that's Pete Piper making their way around the outside, up to the inside into MSAG corner. And it's going to get very scrappy as Jan Ostberg looking around the outside. And, well, makes the move there. And Ostberg showing that sometimes it's about where you find the space, not about being on the right line in order to get the move done. He found that space on the outside and absolutely nails it, and now makes his way down towards what will be at turn number 4 as he comes down towards that braking zone and in towards what is at turn 4. It does look as though here Ostberg right now absolutely on the attack as they all run a little bit wide. They're all pushing it to the absolute ragged edge of adhesion. They'll get away with it once or twice, but on more heavily worn tyres it's going to get worse. And here comes Mark Wesley looking up the inside, and Wesley says, well, you know what, I'm going to take that place back. But Ostberg says in return, well, don't leave the door open then, coming out of Power Horse, otherwise I'll look for the move there. And in the end Wesley does close that door just in time, but Jan Ostberg absolutely attacking here, and well, it's a scrap between while the fastest drivers in the Premier class, and one of our Evo drivers here who's definitely enjoying the learning experience of scrapping with arguably one of the best drivers in Split B for this season based on previous seasons. But as they make the way on through, well, meanwhile, we've got to come back to the front of the Evo class, because this is none other than what is Grant Miller, who is being chased heavily by Robert Nobles. Malasco has actually fallen back behind Nobles over the previous laps and towards the end of the lap, and it does look as though there's some front-end damage on that Ford Mustang of Miller. I believe he may have picked up some damage on the opening couple of laps as part of the big altercation that happened up at turn number 3 here, and where we did see a number of drivers end up with bumps and scrapes and a few go round. And if so, Miller right now might be losing some straight line speed, because the pace of Nobles by comparison has been significantly faster, and I think Miller is falling backwards little by little, and Robert Nobles is absolutely charging and looking for an opportunity to get involved here all the way to what will be that checkered flag. But will he be able to do so in the 22? Well, your guess is as good as mine right now, but I've got a good feeling he's going to have a look for that move in the final 9 minutes of this race, and well, we'll definitely be quite eager to try and put some pressure on Miller, who did seem to be the second best of what's the qualifying class of the Evo drivers. And Nobles right now will be looking at it thinking, okay, I've got time, I've just got to size up the move and make it happen. But of course, catching is one thing, as the late great Murray Walker once said, passing is another. The drivers make their way out of what is turn 7 and 8 and in towards 9. Well, right now, these drivers coming down over the ridge and in towards the right-hander. Well, it is going to be none other than a battle all the way to the end for that victory. But speaking of battles, we look back towards what is the top end of the Premier class, and well, we can see here what is McKee, Rob McKee versus Mark De Vries. De Vries being the chaser in the Ferrari versus the McLaren of McKee, and well, not too much change between them. But meanwhile, what I can definitely tell you is that we do have Matthew Croft here enjoying a bit of a fight with Dale Williams, looking from one side to the other. Is Croft really going for what is the dummy, and he's going to set it up and make it work, switching from the outside to the inside for a 2 into 3, and Croft now gets the run down towards what will be turn number 4. But the problem is Williams and that Mercedes, look at the straight line speed and the acceleration that Mercedes V8 compared to the 6-cylinders of the Porsche. But the Porsche comes in hot on the brakes and says, well, everything you could do on the straights, I can do better in the corners. And in the end, Dale Williams is caught out by it, and here comes Croft then, looking to go inside to outside through 4 into 5. Can he go all the way round through Power Horse? And well, you can see there, look, Williams backs out of it. 9, Croft is going to hold the better line, and in the end, Matthew Croft absolutely nails it there, and that's a lovely move for P8, and Croft is on the charge, but now he's got a 9.5 second gap to close down to Adam Baker, and whilst he's a fast driver, no doubt about it, I think even Croft will respect he has his limits in this race. But then again, given the fact it's the top 15 reverse grid up for what is race number 2 that will come up shortly after this, you can imagine he's going to feel quite confident. If he have a good start in race number 2, well, he could be pushing himself towards that podium, if not at least the top 5. Well, as the drivers make the way towards the end of the lap, well, from them we have had a change of what is the Evo leader, and it's Robert Nobles who has now taken up the place of none other than Grant Miller. But the question is, how exactly did that happen? And well, here's a replay, ladies and gentlemen, to explain the story. And well, in the end, it was on the run on the start of the previous lap. Miller went defensive in at the middle of the road, or the centre of the road, and in the end pulled to the racing line. And Noble said, well, I'm going to dive to the inside here through turn number 1, and respecting the fact that Miller has a straight line speed deficiency with the damage on that Mustang, and therefore Nobles could just make his way past and not have to worry about a counter-attack up into turn number 3. As we return to your live racing pictures, well, there's still more to come between these drivers, no doubt about it. And well, as they claw the way on around right now, it does look as though Noble's absolutely on a charge. But meanwhile, speaking of charges here, Kostrich versus Andre Montine, and Montine on what is the inside there in the Acura. Behind them is Norsworthy and Tabbers. They're watching this battle right now. They're figuring out how they can get involved. And well, it does feel as though these 4 names continue to come up all together. Not that we're complaining about it, as they fight over P14 overall, and in was the Premier class, coming through that left-hander over the dip, and down they go in towards turn number 7. And well, Kostrich gets ahead of Montine again, holding onto the position for now. But Andre Montine very eager to make a move. There's an error there from Kostrich, just takes a little bit too much apex to go over turn number 7. It pushes the car out towards the gravel trap on the inside of turn number 8, but Kostrich just about gets away with it. But next time he may not be as fortunate, and the GP2 machine driver right now for the GP2 Porsche team, well, Kostrich 9, there's a lot of pressure building behind. He wants to try and keep the cork in the proverbial bottle, but the problem with that is in the fact that it's not so easy to do so when you've got a bunch of drivers who are very eager to make some progress. Speaking of one, Norsworthy right now looking to the inside here into turn number 1. Can't quite find it, however, has to back out in the nick of time, but he decides to put that mental pressure on, and well, it's good pressure to put on his rival, because now it's going to be Montino will be looking more and more in his rear view mirrors, but the problem is Sander Tabbers is looking at this and thinking that he can become a third player in it as we ride on board with the P17 driver, and then up the rise for Sim Racing Team Lowlands, and as he makes his way in towards the braking zone, well, the Corvette driver in the end deciding to go a little bit deep, goes to the cutback there to try and get the better run off the corner, and as he does so, tucked deep into the toe of Norsworthy, all of them in the slipstream of one another here as they make the way down towards what will be turn number 4, and looking around the outside is Tabbers. He's going to go all in under braking here, and will Norsworthy have the inside line? He can let the car run a little bit deep if he so desires, force Tabbers to run onto that exit curbing, does exactly that. So Sander Tabbers in the end taking a much wider corner, has to back off, but these two are absolutely scrapping on. It buys Montine a little bit of time and breathing room to think forward rather than backwards. But speaking of thinking forwards, we look here to Mark Wesley and Gareth Newton again, and these two fighting over P7 in the Evo class, and they've been enjoying this battle for a very, very long time right now. Wesley has got ahead of Newton quite recently, and in fact we might be able to get a replay of exactly how that happened in terms of Wesley making the move, but Newton there following him through. In fact, here is the replay to explain, ladies and gentlemen, how it was Wesley who's moved into P7 in the Evo class. Where it was in the run down towards turn number 4, and what you'll see here is that in the number 88, Wesley just on the inside falls a little bit back there without the draft, but in the end, as Newton turns on in, the two rub doors together, and Wesley just gets ahead of it there. Absolutely fair in the end, but very close between the two of them. And well, we come back to the live racing, and as we do, there's still plenty more afoot here with 3.5 minutes left on the clock in the first of our 2 pre-season sprint races, in the fact that we do have the narrative here of Grant Miller under increasing pressure on Mark Parkhurst, albeit intriguingly, whilst Miller was very quickly caught and passed by Robert Nobles' his Acura, it does seem as though the two Porsches of Parkhurst and Greg in the fight for the remaining podium spots in what is the Evo class, they're having difficulty in catching that forward. So unless there's been some sort of error for Miller, or perhaps he's been struggling with some brake temperatures, we do know that the Mustang as well does struggle a little bit on the front brakes. If you're too aggressive, the ABS does lead to a significant amount of overheating on what is those front brakes, albeit all cars you could say do that, but the Mustang is very susceptible by going too much into its ABS zones in order to overheat those front brakes. And right now it looks like Miller's been able to re-find a little bit of the pace from earlier, not to the extent of Nobles, who is lapping at the best part of what is a second faster lap. Parkhurst and Greg just do not have an answer here, and well, it's showing them the fact that Mustang is holding on for now as they make their way out of turn 7 and 8. You can definitely see where the drivers are pushing as hard as they can, but it's becoming one of the situations whereby the rubber is not there to push as much as they would like to in the earlier stages of the race. Looking from them back towards the race leader then with 6 seconds of gap. I was going to say 6 seconds left on the clock, but no, he's extended the gap to 6 seconds. He's putting more on the clock every second we turn. Well, that's a conundrum to work your way through there. Time is relative, and Peter Duke right now simply says the only thing that's not relative is the fact that he's going to take that victory, because in P2 is Craig Taylor in the McLaren, who's in a very peaceful P2 as well, and in James Hallworth in P3 here. Not too much pressure on Rob McKee being 1.8 seconds behind. These drivers close, but not close enough. But what's happened as well in terms of story further on down, I believe Grant Miller has had to come into the pit lane as I look at my commentary booth window for what has been some repair work to the car, so therefore Miller has relinquished P2 in at the Evo class off camera towards Mark Parkhurst, and that is going to be the majority of the Evo class that moves up 1 position, minus Robert Nobles, who was already leading at the time. But then we do look to Christian Malaskov as he heads on down in towards the braking zone. In fact, we need to hold the phone there, because that is a battle between Norsworthy and Tabbers. That's for position in the Premier class, and that is going to be Tabbers on the inside this time as they come through 4 in towards 5 and into 6, and as he looks his way on around here, well, these two absolutely neck and neck as they roll the way through the left-hander, and well, Tabbers in the end will hold on, albeit will he be able to hold all the way round? That is very brave to go that deep into turn 7. You don't normally see that, but Sander Tabbers in the end makes it count, and Ross Norsworthy I think just runs out of rubber in the end in order to make that battle stick any further. And well, now he's got Denny Plugger, and Plugger looking up the inside of the Dutchman, absolutely on the attack in the 1-1-2, and well, can't quite find it, as meanwhile Robert Nobles backs off there as what is your leader of the Evo class pulls himself out of that battle, doesn't want anything to do with it, so playing the smart game. But as our drivers continue to charge onwards towards another lap, I think we might be in the realm of almost the final lap of this race. 33 seconds on the clock. Our race leader Peter Duke is already halfway round the lap, so we're going to be very close here as to whether we're going to get 20 laps or a 21st lap, and we will see what is going to come out, no doubt about it. But one thing with certainty is the fact that right now Tabbers is trying to break away from Norsworthy in the battle for P16, in the Premier class, and it looks though Sander Tabbers has finally found a way to break the stalemate between the two of them. But as the stalemate comes to an end from them, meanwhile we look to your race leader here, and Wordsy comes over the rise. This will be the final lap because the clock strikes 0, and as Peter Duke makes his way through turns 9 and 10, he put it on pole by half a second, and after what was a fast and ferocious start, he's never looked back, and as the checker flag waves, Peter Duke will take victory overall and in the Premier class for what will be the first pre-season race here at the Red Bull Ring in Split B. Craig Taylor will finish runner-up there, and then it will be James Horworth who complete the top 3 overall and in the Premier class. We've still got some time before Rob McKee comes across the line. There he does P4 ahead of Nick Stubb, and then it'll be Mark De Vries who then just holds off Adam Baker to line for P6. Matthew Croft will then make his way through, and it will be P8 in the end for the man affectionately known as Crofty in the YouTube chat by looks of things. And as he comes across the line, the Porsche driver there got a good 1.4 second gap to Dale Williams, with Jim Fox P10 behind them. And then it's Henry Coolan, Robin Aston, John Lebret and Scott Kostrick who'll complete the running order to P14. P15 goes to Andrew Montine, but further back meanwhile coming to line will be your EVO winner, and it will be Robert Nobles in the end who survived the ups and downs to take EVO victory, ahead of Mark Parkhurst and Rob Gregg, the 3 of them all separated by 1.1 seconds in totality at the end, very close at the finish. And then we will see P23 Pete Piver ahead of Gareth Newton and Jan Osterberg completing what will be your top 25 with the Swede. After that difficult race start, having started on the front row of the grid, it all went backwards at turn number 3. Mark Wesley, Meneblom, Jordan Zev Smith, and it'll be Craig Tillerson and Grant Miller who complete your top 30, with Miller having to take that quick fast repair right at the end of the race, and a frustrating one at that. But last our drivers come towards the timeline, and we'll give them all a round of applause, ladies and gentlemen, regardless of whether they've been the victor or finished last at the end of the day. It's always great to see so many drivers make it to the checker flag. And will P35 will be Christopher Starsmore, and well, that will complete race number 1. But we've got a 5-minute warm-up, of course, before race number 2, and you know what that gives us a prime time to do? It gives us a prime time to take a look for those race results, subject to any stewards' inquiries, of which I don't think there are going to be for this pre-season event. And as we can see, after 30 minutes of racing in the first of our 2 sprint races for today, Peter Duke, your victor overall and in the Premier class, ahead of Craig Taylor. The DDK Racing Team driver absolutely on rails from start to finish and never looking back. Then we saw Lumen Motorsports' Craig Taylor, P2, in a bit of a lonely race for himself, ahead of James Horworth, with Rob McKee missing out on the podium there by 1.5 seconds for DXT Motorsports behind his teammate. Morgan Fastness by Gladstone Racing's Nick Stubb was P5 there, the Dutchman ahead of his fellow countryman for Sim Racing Team Lowlands, and Mark De Vries. And the top 10 was completed by Adam Baker for LS Racing B, ahead of Matthew Croft for Z-Axis Sim Sports, who fought hard and arguably made the most overtakes of anybody in this race, at least in the Premier class. And then we also saw Dale Williams there for Vulcan Fastness by Glasstep Racing, and the priority of Jim Fox round off that top 10. Best of the rest P11 was Henry Coolan for Sim Racing Team Lowlands, who managed to break away from Robin Aston at the close for Sumer GP2. Then came at GP2 Porsche's combination of John Ludbrook and Scott Kostrick for P13, P14, with 15th place going to Andrew Montine. The Z-Axis Sim Sports driver then being followed up by Sander Tabbers, who enjoyed that brilliant battle between himself and Roz Norsworthy all the way to a close, with Denny Plurger and Christian Malaskov completing a top 19 of Premier drivers. And then we come on to the Evo drivers there, with Robert Nobles and taking the accolade of being your EVO winner of the privateer, ahead of Z-Axis Sim Sports' Mark Parkhurst and Rob Gregg for Moonshiners Racing Club, who completed your podium of EVO drivers. And further down the finishing order, as we continue the theme of going down through the positions, well, we also got to see there what was Pete Piver, P23, ahead of Gareth Newton, the 4th place driver in what was the Evo class. And then it was P25 for Jan Osterberg, ahead of Mark Wesley, Minna Bloom, Jordan Zev Smith, Craig Tillerson and Grant Miller. And Miller with that misfortune with some damage to the car and having to take that fast repair right at the end. Dominique Bacuis was P31 ahead of Sean Clark. And then to round off the finishing positions, we come towards the very end there, we did see Dean Sheesby at P33 ahead of Daniel Paul, and well, Daniel Paul being the first of a number of drivers was a lap down. Also there, Klaas Vellen, also Krista Starsmore, 2 laps down to Adil Chowdhury, who did well to put it on pole in the Evo class, but an open lap instant cost him very dear. Danny Weir 3 laps down, but still got it to the finish with DXT Motorsports. And then we did have the retirements of Liam Fraser, Ricardo Louise, and also there Jason Haddington and Steve Rubino. But going on to the individual class finishing positions then, of course, because it is all about the classes at the end of the day, and as we do come on to those, well, we do a look back up the order, and as we can see, Peter Duke there, your winner for the Premier class, ahead of fellow podium finishers Craig Taylor 2nd place and James Horworth P3. Robert Keane, Nick Stubb completed your Premier top 5 ahead of Mark De Vries, with Adam Baker, Matthew Croft, Dale Williams and Jim Fox completing the class's top 10. The best there is Henry Coulin in the end. Will be disappointed to not finish inside the top 10, but he'd be very happy to enjoy that brilliant battle between himself, Fox, and Robin Aston. Aston taking P12 ahead of John Ludbrook. And there was the top 15 completed by Scott Kostry and Andre Montine. Andre Montine and Sander Towers' battle definitely will be one that sets the pace for the season in terms of the quality of the racing we can expect to see, as will at Tabbers and Norsworthy's battle, Ros Norsbury at P17. And then we do see it Denny Ploger, Christian Malskov, and Pete Paver completing the top 20. Jan Österberg and Menno Bloom completing your top 25 there. Well, top 25, top 22, I should say, getting ahead of myself of the Premier class. But we still had more Premier drivers there. And, well, it's P20, free for Craig Tillerson ahead of Dominique Braquis and Dean Sheesby completing all the Premier drivers on the lead lap. A lap down for Klaas Vellen and Christopher Starsmore, 3 laps down to Danny Weir, and in retirements for Liam Fraser, Ricardo Louise, and also there Jason Haddington. And then going on to the EVO class, let's not forget about them. And as we can see, Robert Nobles, your class winner in the EVO class, in the end, picking up the pieces that were left behind by Grant Miller and Mark Parkhurst and Rob Gregg flying soup. But the trio separated by 1.1 seconds on that podium. And, well, could we see plenty more fighting between them in race number 2, given the fact that none of them finished inside the overall top 15, so therefore there'll be no EVO drivers inside that top 15 inversion. Gareth Newton had missed out on the podium, but took P4 ahead of Mark Wesley, with John Zev Smith missing out on the top 5 there by 7 seconds, but still 2 seconds clear of Grant Miller, and then Sean Clark being in what was P8 there to round off the lead lap finishes of the EVO class. It was a lap down to Daniel Paul, 2 laps down to Adil Chowdhury. We can expect to fight his way through the field in race 2, and an unfortunate retirement for Steve Rubino for Hobo Racing. But those are all the finishing positions, ladies and gentlemen, from what was our first race of the day. And the circuit falls silent for a brief period, but it doesn't fall silent for long, understandably, because, of course, we've got more to come very shortly in our second race of the day. And we can only apologise once again with the fact that the broadcast did not quite go live going into qualifying. It didn't even before that, and that was a complete technical hitch on our end here. And, well, thankfully, we were able to get that fixed before we did go into what was the race itself. But we own that. It's a small technical hitch. It was a press of a button, essentially, and that won't happen for what is round number 1 in a week's time. But that's why you have these pre-season events, because they are what enable you to identify when the small mishaps happen, or the big mishaps in this time, but because of small things. But as what is the warm-up session comes to a close here at the Red Bull Ring, you know what time it is, ladies and gentlemen. It's time for race number 2. And as our drivers make the way to the grid, Quick and I get the opportunity to take a glass of water, it would seem. Well, this is how they'll line up for our second race of the day. With the top 15 inverted, it is Andre Montine who lines up pole sitter with that reverse top 15 for Z-Axis Simsports ahead of Scott Kostry. Then came GP2 Porsche driver, then followed up by John Ludbrook and Robin Aston on row at number 2, with Henry Coulin and Jim Fox on the third row of the grid. And then Dale Williams, the Vulcan Fasters by Glass Tech Racing driver there. We'll enjoy another battle with Matthew Croft, the Z-Axis Simsports driver. Well, he'll be starting in that P8 slot. Adam Baker and then Mark De Vries make up your 5th row and complete your top 10. Watch out for the Dutchman of De Vries. The Sim Racing Team Lowlands driver had a bit of a quiet race number 1. He'll be looking for a bit more of a loud race number 2, as will Nick Starb there. The Vulcan Fasters by Glass Tech Racing driver starts P11 ahead of Rob McKee. On row number 7, it's James Horworth and Craig Taylor. Well, then your top 15 inversion being completed by race 1 winner Peter Duke, has got to do all the hard work for DDK Racing Team and fight his way through. Sander Tabber starts P16 there ahead of Ros Norsworthy, with Denny Ploger, Christian Malskov, and then Robert Nobles completing your top 20, the only what is their Evo driver inside the top 20, and he'll start on pole for his class. And then a bit further down the order there as we come to what is row number 11. It will be Mark Parkhurst ahead of Rob Gregg, with the Moonshiners Racing Club driver, then followed up by Pete Piver and what is Gareth Newton. Jan Osberg starts P25, a far cry from where he started in race number 1 of the day, but he'll know he's got the pace to fight his way through. Mark Wesley starts P26 ahead of Menno Bloom, and then Jordan Zev Smith starts P28, with Craig Tillerson and Grant Miller on the row behind him to complete the top 30. P31 is Dominic Braquis ahead of Sean Clark. And then we do have the Moonshiners Racing Club driver Dean Sheensby starting P33 ahead of Daniel Paul. And the Flatline Racing drivers followed up then on row number 18 by Klaas Vellen from Germany and the Briton of Christopher Starsmore. And then we do have on row number 19 Adil Chowdhury, who's got all the hard work to do from P37. And he will be in the company of Danny Weir for DXT Motorsports. Completing your top 40 on row 20 is Liam Fraser and Ricardo Luis Piera. And then on your final row of the grid, what will be P41, P42, Jason Haddington and Steve Rubino. So 42 starters once again, ladies and gentlemen. Albeit I think some of our drivers opting to start from the pit lane this time. But as we get ready to go once again, we clear the grid away. And indeed, we are all set for race number 2 of the day. as the drivers make the way on around. And well, for Andre Montine, the wonderful thing is when you ride on board with him here, he has got a completely empty circuit in front of him, or he will when the safety car peels away. But will it remain empty for long, and will he be able to pull away? That will be the big question that will be on his mind. Can he run away with this and run away to victory, or will he find himself in that position whereby the pressure is going to build and it will build up to a crescendo? Meanwhile, further down the order, of course, looking to other drivers, will we ride on board with Robert Nobles here, another Acura driver here, and will the number 22, he'll know that he's got Greg and Parkhurst immediately behind for company, and will they enjoy a great scrap in race number 1, but in race number 2, could it be a very different story, and will Nobles be able to just break away and sail off into the distance, or could we see that fight for the Evo class boil over and bring the likes of Newton, Wesley, Miller and even Zev Smith into it? With all that and more, we are only a couple of corners away from going green flag racing to find out, and when we do, it's to this man, Andre Montine, who'll be taking us to the green flag for another 30 minutes to wrap up what will be our racing here at the Red Bull Ring for this pre-season event. But as they make the way on over the rise and down towards turn number 9, well, let's leave it to the man in the Acura to take it away. Lights out and away we go for our second of our 2 races here in Austria, and Montine gets a reasonable start, but Kostic immediately keeps him honest. Look out for Fox on the inside there in the rear of your picture. He's trying to squeeze his way on in, but as they make the way on through, one is the opening corner. There's also Adam Baker trying to get a little bit greedy there, both being so close to the wall. It doesn't quite work out. A few drives run wide. It's 3 wide there. Meanwhile, there's a bit of podium pandemonium further back. We'll have to take a look at that later, but it's going to be 3 wide as Mark DeVries, Dale Williams, and what is there? Henry Coolan all trying to battle, but in the end, Coolan backs out, or does he in the Acura? You'll see him there on the left of your picture in the red Acura. The Mercedes stands tall right in the middle, and Williams in the end, Darryl Williams simply decides to part the seas, and like Moses takes his way through to the victory in that battle. But as they make the way out of turn 3 in towards 4, well, now coming on down, it's going to be Taylor all over the back of Coolan in the rear of the picture. As you can see there, the McLaren driver looking up the outside now as they come down towards the braking zone, and meanwhile Adam Baker after that look up the inside into turn 1, it didn't quite work out, so now he's got to do everything from a little bit further back, but the drivers roll them through and head out of turn 4 in towards 5, and well, there's still more to come between them here, as I don't think the battle is going to calm down anytime soon. Meanwhile, Robert Nobles had a brilliant start. It's a lightning start from what was the Evo pole sitter. In fact, he's gained 3 places overall and absolutely run away from the rest of his Evo peers. And if anything, in fact, the rest of the Evo class seems to have stumbled where he has sprinted away, because your P2 driver right now is Mark Parkhurst, but he's all the way down in P23, losing 2 places from the start. And well, conversely, Grant Miller, he's a little bit further back. Rob Gray's the next Evo driver, but then Grant Miller's already found his way up to P4 in that Mustang, and well, they've got where the damage was on the car fixed after race number 1, and you can tell because he is absolutely flying. But right now, one driver who's flying in the wrong way, that's into the pit lane. That's Sander Tabbers, who's had a big spin coming out of turn number 9. I can imagine cold tyres and perhaps a little bit of assistance has turned him. We'll try and find out the story there shortly, but after 1 lap of racing, and indeed a lap 1 that we've got to do a lot of dissecting of because there's been quite a few incidents, we can tell you that it is Andre Montine who leads the way ahead of Scott Kostrick P2. John Ludbrook completes your top 3. That's Premier and overall, followed by Robin Aston. Then it's Jim Fox P5, Matthew Croft P6 ahead of Dale Williams P7, Mark DeVries P8, and then it's Craig Taylor and Henry Coolan completing your top 10. Bester SP11 is Peter Duke, and then we do have Robert Nobles, who is your Evo leader in P15, and he is still gaining places. Nobles is not showing any signs of stopping, but meanwhile I can also show you signs of what is a battle that's not going to stop, and here it is, as we do have Matthew Croft battling with Williams and also DeVries. DeVries backs out there in where's the Ferrari. There's contact there between Williams, and it turns Matthew Croft sideways and into the gravel. It's a 180-degree pirouette, but that's going to be absolutely frustrating to 113 driver, who's now going to have to take his time to rejoin. That's going to put him all the way down the order, and Dale Williams now has got all the Hornets around him as he takes a big slide as well into the gravel at turn number 6. He regains it back together as we see the Ferrari there of Norsworthy just quickly make its way on through, but also run wide as a result of it. So it's a little bit of pandemonium here in what is the Premier class, and right now they're putting on the Premier show, no doubt about it, as they brawl the way on through. But meanwhile, as they move up the inside there into turn 9, and that's John Ludbrook who's found his way past Kostrich for P2. Ludbrook is absolutely on the attack here. And well, it's a 30-minute race, so they can push the tyre compound a little bit more compared to what they would over a longer distance race. But right now, if Ludbrook pushes too hard too early, it will come back to haunt him later on in the race because he will lose some tyre life. But meanwhile, Peter Duke's not too worried about tyre life. He's just sailing his way on through as he makes a move down. Henry Coolan in the battle of the Acuras going through turn 1 and up towards turn number 3 they go. And as they do, Norsworthy meanwhile watches on behind in the Ferrari. And well, that is a car going sideways in the rear of the picture, I believe, unless I'm mistaken. That is the Ferrari of what is, I believe, that is Menno Bloom who's taken the turn for the worst at turn number 1. Not quite sure what's happened there, but everything seems to be playing off as quickly as we can cover it. But meanwhile, Pete Piver here on the inside battling with Denny Plugger, and it's the McLaren driver Piver who's going up the inside there, Plugger, in towards turn number 3. It's a simple move on paper, but is it going to turn out to be one in reality? And your answer is yes, he does pull it off and makes it work out, does Pete Piver, and as a result they come down in towards turn number 4. The place is swapped. Mark Parkhurst meanwhile still under a bit of pressure here to try and hold on to some places and catch back up to Nobles. So that is Jan Osterberg going around the outside, gaining another place as the lightning fast Swede, and as they head in towards turn number 6. Well, right now it really is Osterberg trying to pick up those places. He started P25, he's already up to P19, and he's still got the best part of 25 minutes of this race and then some change to go, and it's looking good right now in terms of trying to break his way back into the top 10 before all is said and done. But whilst all this is playing out, well, even further back we do have Baker versus Bloom, and it was Menno Bloom who moments ago was pointing in the wrong direction at turn number 1, and well, now over the back of Sean Clark, what is your Evo driver there, with Bloom and Baker really pushed each other along, and Baker figured out a potential move here in the McLaren 20S Evo, but he can't find a way in versus the Ferrari at this time. Or does he really want to find a way? And perhaps that's the better question, as he runs a little bit wide there, a little bit of snatch on the steering wheel, so definitely a car that's not in a happy place. As we see Bloom go a bit wide out of turn number 10, got to be careful those run wides. Do it too often, you'll pick up a slowdown. He doesn't do so this time, but looking at all the way from where the start finish line on towards what we the run up towards turn number 3, as that is an attempt to try and make it 3 wide from the McLaren of Rob McKee. McKee thinks about it and then decides, no, that's a rallycross line, we're not allowed to use those. And as they come through turn number 3, well, Nobles goes absolutely like clockwork with this racing line, does Malaskov as well, and McKee having to wait and watch on as they make the way onwards towards what will be turn number 4. But down they go into that braking zone, and as they do, McKee right now feeling very eager to make the moves, but the thing is he's got to wait here and think about it, because he might be able to gain 2 places for the price of 1. But the problem is, if he doesn't do it right, then he could very quickly become undone. And well, Ros Norsworthy meanwhile battling with a wounded Mercedes there of Dale Williams. Many of you remember that contact we saw between Williams and some other drivers earlier on at turn number 4, and in the end Williams missing the front bumper. That's going to lead to a lot of aerodynamic drag on the straight, and that's enabling now Norsworthy to go all the way through with this move. Through turn 7 into 8, a lovely bit of side-by-side racing as they come over the crest and down into Jochen Rindt at 9. Norsworthy on the inside there, surely that's going to be enough to get him ahead. It is, and now Stubbs going to have the pressure here of Nobles, Malaskov and McKee all queuing up behind as they come out of the corner, but looking back from the rear of what is the Ferrari 296. Well, there you can see just how close they're going to get, and I think in fact Norsworthy having to yield a bit of a defensive line here in order to be able to keep what is his rival behind, but Stubbs going all through it. And meanwhile, by running wide, that was Robert Nobles making contact with Stubb as they head up the right. So Robert Nobles now trying to get his boxing gloves out here, wants to get involved in the fight as they make the way up the hill, and we can understand why. But look at that Mercedes, whilst it's got some damage, it's not going any slower, and Norsworthy right now is about hard on the brakes, and well, he'll get back ahead, and here comes Nobles as well as he gets what is the front absolutely dumped in on perfection. And what is your Evo leader right now on the charge here, but he can't find a way through. There's even more fighting to go on, as that is James Horworth ahead on where again Osberg trying to look for the move on the Ford. He can't quite find it at this time, as Norsworthy meanwhile tries to go for the move there all the way on Stubb, can't quite find it. In fact, goes very deep into the corner. That's going to open up the door to Nobles. McKee meanwhile versus Christian Malaskov, and Rob McKee inside on turn 4, outside of turn number 6, and well, there's only one way this is going to go, and it goes very, very wrong. In fact, it's an alternative way. I don't think we're going to see McKee go sideways. I thought McKee was going to back out there, but in the end the rear lets go on the McLaren, and the 720S GT3 machine in the end escorts McKee to the grass and then back onto the circuit. But what a hair-raising moment there for McKee, and well, I think he'll be surprised at the way that one went, most certainly. But as the drivers head over the rise and in towards what is turn number 9, well, from them we do look back to Robert Nobles, who continues to hold off Norsworthy and Malaskov for now, but he's left what is Stubbs left him behind, as was Dale Williams. The two Mercedes drivers roaring onwards, and this is free wide down the start for this straight. And with your Robert Nobles at this point on the outside, you're just going to look to your right and see that Maniscalco goes deep on the inside. So it does Norsworthy in the centre, and Nobles tries to cut it back, but cuts back too prematurely. And here comes Piver. Piver's absolutely on a charge now, and it's going to be Nobles who's given a bit of an elbow here as they come too wide up the rise, in towards turn number 3, in towards the braking zone they go, 2 by 2, and well, surely not thinking about making it 4 wide. You don't do that, surely. And it's going to be Maniscalco in the end who tries to go all the way around the output through the inside, and Ross Norsworthy holding it on the outside, and the Ferrari's got the grip, but he hasn't got the traction. And therefore the Ferrari does languish a little bit on the exit, and meanwhile Norsworthy is just able to put the throttle down and run to the inside of turn number 4, down into what is at the right-hand arena as they go. Nobles very, very tetchy under braking there, and well, it's a run to the gravel for what was Norsworthy. Now, I'm not quite sure there's contact between the two of them. The camera angle suggested there might have been a brief tap. However, that's one camera angle. We don't have access to all of them, but of course other administrators do. And as they come down through what is turn 6 in towards 7, well, right now Nobles is doing everything he can to move further up the order into P13 currently, and I think he fancies his chances here of holding on to a top 15 overall before the day is said and done. But whilst all this has been happening, well, one thing we haven't really talked about is the fact that we do have some race leaders who are running off into the distance, and here's your race leader who started on that top 15 reverse pole position of Andre Montine. He has got a 1.2 second gap over Scott Kostrick, and then we see Robin Aston completing that top 3 with Jim Fox right behind him in P4. Big front wide there for John Ludbrook. That is only going to go one way, and that is going to cost him a lot of momentum up the run. Here comes Craig Taylor in the McLaren behind, albeit that McLaren looking very slow on the straight. I wonder just how much rear wing is on that McLaren, because it is not building up any speed even in the draft there, albeit he's going to go for it on the brakes here. Here's Taylor. That is bold, and well, in the end, bold moves win big prizes, it would seem, with your Craig Taylor, because that worked out. I didn't think he was going to get that stopped in time, but Ludbrook in the end saw it coming, let the door stay open a little bit to respect the fact that Taylor had the right to the inside, and as they come on down now, it's going to be all about Peter Duke looking up the inside. Remember, Duke was your race 1 winner in absolutely unstoppable form by the best part of over 7 seconds, and well, right now as they come out of turn number 4 in towards 5 and 6, it's too wide between the two of them. As they come over the crest and down in towards Power Horse Corner, well, Duke right now trying to go all the way around, can't quite find it. And meanwhile, Mark De Vries, he's got the popcorn seat view, if you will, here, in the fact we get to ride on board with him and see what is De Vries try to stay with this battle. And in return, the Dutchman gets to watch how Peter Duke might be able to find a way past John Ludbrook. But it's easier said than done, because Ludbrook's not just going to simply roll over for Duke. Whether this is a pre-season race or worth points, well, it's not worth any points today, it's worth bragging rights. And I think Ludbrook would like to be able to say to Duke, you know what, I'm able to keep you behind when you come behind me, and that is an accolade in itself. And you can prove you're a good defensive driver. As De Vries there almost runs too wide and almost picks up the slowdown for his efforts as they make the way up towards turn number 1. Well, right now De Vries falling a little bit further back from this battle, but he has got a comfort gap of 3 seconds to what is Dale Williams and the Mercedes who's running in P9, so therefore De Vries can just watch this battle comfortably and not worry as much about what could unfold. But speaking of unfolding, here comes Duke then, and in the end Duke getting the better run. I also think there that Ludbrook might be serving a slowdown for track limits, because he is going quite slowly, and De Vries goes up the inside there and gets it absolutely nailed under braking. And well, Mark De Vries moves onwards, and Ludbrook in the end now tries to recompensate and reconsolidate the positions where he can, albeit that's not going to be a straightforward. But further back, that is pretty wide into turn 3, and well, in the end I think Jan Osberg going very, very deep at the corner, and perhaps too deep into the corner, and Ross Norsworthy and James Horsworth, well, it's the big bulky titans of the Ferrari and what is the Mustang. The Ferrari being a very wide car, the Mustang being big and tall by comparison. It's going to be Horsworth all the way out the inside. It's a big, big move under braking in a car that doesn't like to stop, and as they come out of turn number 4, well, Horsworth absolutely doing a brilliant job there to get it stopped, but it's Norsworthy who gets himself back on the inside into turn 6. They come through the left-hander, and out to Power Horse they go. Osberg is now back into this battle, and Ross Norsworthy and what is James Horworth both need to take a bow here, because this is absolutely brilliant racing between them. Keep it clean, guys, because we love to see this. But here comes Osberg as he looks up the inside, and as they come out of the right-hander in towards turn number 9, well, it's going to be Osberg who gets one at least. He doesn't get the other, but he does get the 1 place. Meanwhile, looking a little bit further back, And one of our heroes so far this race as well, we haven't really talked about him on camera. He's now Adil Chowdhury, the Verano Academy driver, who has started all the way towards the back of the field after a nightmare start to his race one after putting it on Evo pole. Well, he's made his way up into P6 in the Evo class so far, and he's very quickly reconnoitering his way after Sean Clark. Well, he's going to have Adam Baker looking on the inside here, and well, I wouldn't be surprised if Chowdhury just lets this go, because he doesn't need to necessarily fight, albeit there's no points in the line, so he can choose to fight if he wants to. But if he wants to get himself into the mindset of the season ahead, he may opt to let Baker go into turn one, and that he does. He's got Rob Grigg behind him, and Chowdhury will just try to simply let Baker run him all the way out towards turn number 3 and give him that draft to chase after Clark, who he is closing on little by little. But as they head up the hill towards the braking zone, well, from all this, we've also got some Silver Stars playing out here. This is Miller versus Parkhurst, and when I say Silver Stars, in reference to the Evo coloration there, and as they come down into towards that braking zone, well, right now, the number 80 of Miller, that Mustang that was wounded early and now brings itself back to life, is absolutely on a mission here to try and pick up places. And well, how did he get the move done on Mark Parkhurst, I hear you ask? Well, here's the quick replay to explain. This was moments ago, and it was on the exit of turn number 10, and onwards they went towards what was at turn 1, and Will Parkhurst on at the outside there, Miller on the inside, and well, this is going to be a very brave move from Miller to do it, and in fact, on the inside there, that was very touchy, and that could have been a bit of contact with Dean Sheesby, but Sheesby in and seeing what was coming, and Miller just about nailing it. All three drivers there negotiating that very well in what could have been a very different set of circumstances if they hadn't shown that awareness of each other. But whilst it may be split B, and whilst it may be the Evo class, these guys have got Premier vision, no doubt about it, in terms of their driving awareness of each other. But still, as we sing praise to them, let's not sing too much, because otherwise the commentator's curse can come and strike at any moment. Well, looking a bit further back, here is the Simcast machine of Crystal Starsbore fighting behind Dominique Paquis as they head onwards towards turns 2 and 3. And as they do, well, these drivers right now all staying in line formation here, all enjoying a bit of a battle towards the bottom end of the top 30 overall. But what is the fight for P22 through P24 in up the Premier class? And all in the tuck at this time. Nobody able to find a move on each other, and therefore all having to wait for the opportunity to try and strike when the target is right. But from them, we look all the way towards the back of the field, all the way towards the very front of the field. And whilst we were saying earlier that Andre Montina was absolutely flying, well, right now it does seem as though that flight has suddenly been grounded, because the last lap he lost half a second to Scott Kostridge, and that gap has come down very quickly indeed. And well, as they make the way up through what is at turn number 9 in towards 10, slight connectivity issues there for what is at Montine, but it does rematerialise from the ether, and as they come out to turn 10, well, Montine right now, I think, knowing he's still got half a race to run, has he run out of tyre life before he's managed to get into the second half of the race? That might be a concern. But as they make the way out the rides, one thing that's not of a concern, but indeed it's always a welcome thought, is saying hello to Mark Kent there in the YouTube channel. Wish he's known sooner about this league, and indeed I'm with you on that, Mark, because goodness me, what racing it is, and what a grid to be on it. This is just a pre-season event. You can only imagine how it's going to be when we go green flag racing. But we've got to come back to the fact here that meanwhile, with an error coming out of turn number 1, Kostridge has lost time to maintain, and that's going to enable Aston to get a move here on the inside of where's Kostridge in towards turn number 3. These two are going to fight, and well, with this fighting, it's going to buy Andre Montina time, and time is what he needs. He needs this gap to open up again, and Aston coming back now. And Kostridge, after the two swap places, 6 laps to go, down to the braking zone they go, and Aston on the inside there, the battle of the two GP2 Porsche machines, and well, Aston will get ahead, but Jim Fox is watching this eagerly, and will he be like the cunning fox of Roald Dahl novels in the United Kingdom, and will he be looking for where's an opportunity here to make a move? Well, we'll have to see as we ride on board with the P4 driver, the privateer, as he comes in towards the corner, and the car there just sliding a little bit away, the camera angle there making it look as though the car was about to let go, but you could see the rotation, and now he's able to stay close despite falling off a corner apex. And while the wiper's going on there to get some of the stone chips off, takes Pete to the inside, really trying to get his nose in there, trying to lull Kostridge into a false error in terms of just psyching out into thinking a move is coming when it's not. And as they come out to the right-hander, up the right, they'll go towards turn number 1, but no change between these three drivers. And Fox right now just having to wait and watch and listen as they head up the hill and into what will be at their 12th tour of the circuit in this race. We're coming through there, a very close run, but Kostridge gets a bit too close to the back of Aston, and Fox gets too close to return. This is going to be a drag race now between the two as they make the way very casually here up the hill. And meanwhile, that's going to be 3 wide because here comes Woody's Peter Duke, and also I believe that's Craig Taylor. Taylor appears out of nowhere, makes it 3 wide on the outside. Can he nail it? Can he get it done? And the answer is Craig Taylor. Yes, he can, because he just comes out of left field, and Craig Taylor doesn't need to be told twice to make it a 3 wide and 2 places for the price of 1 corner. What a bit of opportunism there for Craig Taylor, and that shows you if you go into a corner at turn number 1 too close to your rivals in front, you are going to be severely punished by any driver who's about a second behind and gets a fully good run out of the corner, and indeed such a good run that it's made my English completely fall apart there. I'll get my lexicon back together very shortly, but Craig Taylor right now, well, I think we're not going for move of the season quite yet, but if we were accepting candidates this early on, Craig Taylor may have already just gone for one of the grand nominees of it, at least in Split B, because what a way to do it by simply going 3 wide with a lot of momentum compared to his rivals, and even making sure that Peter Duke had to stumble over everyone else. But from that, let's come down a little bit further down the order to the absolutely mad hat battling here between Rob McKee and Ross Norsworthy, as these two continue to fight with Jan Osberg and Dean Sheesby caught up behind. Osberg there trying to go around the outside, and Sheesby watching on the fellow Porsche as the Ferrari and Norsworthy here. Well, I can tell you one thing, that Ferrari has seen Porsche's left, it's seen them right, and they're going to go 3 wide here. Surely into the Jokovic corner, and it goes very wrong as they all come up through. That is not a place to go 3 wide, 2 wide at the best of times, and that's what happens when you try and go 3 wide. And in the end, I think Norsworthy didn't know where to go. He didn't have space on the inside, he had no space to go on the outside, and in the end get caught in the pinch. And well, Norsworthy's race has gone sideways and then backwards down the order. But I'm sure they'll have a little chat about it afterwards, and there'll be no hard feelings knowing how it's all played out. But the drivers there definitely enjoying a very close battle between them. But meanwhile, looking back up inside the top 10, this is Dale Williams picking up a place there of what is John Ludbrook as they make the way out to the right hand with a hairpin AMS AG at turn number 3, and now down towards Remus at 4 they go onto the brakes, and will no change between them. But meanwhile, that is a big lunge from the 169 Mercedes of Nick Stubb, and Stubb might be missing the front bumper, but he's not missing any of his bravery, I can tell you that. And well, right now Henry Coolan, seeing what was an absolutely flying Mercedes car his inside, I think recognising, look, this is going to go 1 of 2 ways. We're either going to end up in contact, I'm going to have to yield the place, and Coolan taking option number 2 there, and well, they've been able to survive it as a result. But my goodness, what a move from Nick Stubb there, and I had to absolutely lick the stamp and send it, no doubt about it. But sometimes that's what you've got to do, and well, when there's respect given between 2 drivers, well, that's when those moves do pay off. But from them, meanwhile, we've got a bit of drama, as that is Grant Miller, who's had a big moment at Powerhorse Corner at turn number 6. He was chasing after Mark Parkhurst for the runner-up spot in the EVO class. But can we get a replay as to what's happened for Miller? Yes, we can. We've got it on speed dial, the replay, and here it is to explain the story. And this was the number 80 car making its way out of turn 5 into 6, battling side by side there initially, but back it off, and a big twitch there for Miller. Now that I've not seen in a long time, and of all the cars to see have a big twitch on turn into turn 6, well, the Mustang would be the last I'd expect, given how heavy it is over its front axle, and indeed over the rear as well. It's a very heavy car in general, but I would imagine that's where he's come down the gears very aggressively and tried to push the car into the apex, but in the end it's just let go, and well, the car's completely come unstuck, and I wouldn't be surprised there's perhaps even a brake lock up there despite the ABS. But as we come back to your live pictures, well, more to come. We still do have the best part of 10 minutes left on the clock, and 10 minutes means we've got 10 times the race in action sure to come at this point, albeit statistics may vary. And well, at the moment, this is Baker versus Norsworthy, these two. Baker haven't started from the very back of the field. Norsworthy demoted to the back of the field after that contact between himself and 2 Porsches at turn number 9, a lap ago. And well, these two right now fighting over P24 in the Premier class, and they're enjoying themselves, no doubt about it, as they make the way down to the braking zone. Will it be Baker is ahead on the right, your picture, Norsworthy on the left, and it will be Norsworthy in the end in the Ferrari that gets it stopped, makes its way for the right-hander, and absolutely dials it in to perfection, and will continue to push onwards. Here he goes, but as he does so, well, meanwhile, we do have what is Christian Malskov, who has had a great race as well, having started P19, 6 places gained. He's made a big crusade through this order, and right now the Porsche driver has Pete Piper behind him, also James Hallworth a little bit further back, and well, the Porsche driver here in the 107.9, there's still some work to do, but all work can be done before all is said and done in this race, no doubt about it, and the drivers continue to push each other to the absolute limit at this time as they roar onwards in towards the next of the corners. But as they do, well, right now it's all going to be about the charge all the way through towards that checkered flag between them, and the drivers here enjoying some fantastic racing, it must be said, as they head up towards what will be turn number 3. coming in towards the braking zone and onwards. Well, everything right now is going to be absolutely on the charge, and all the drivers here looking as though right now it is all coming together right towards the end in those battles, albeit we've still got plenty of time to go here, and plenty of moments still could play out all the way to the finish. As Robin Aston follows on through here, he has got Craig Taylor right behind him, and in fact Craig Taylor, he's not quite satisfied with the place he's made so far, and we do get a look back from what's the rear of our P2 Porsche with Suma GP2, and well, as we do see the 125 here, Robin Aston trying to hold on. Well, Craig Taylor's queuing up, so is Peter Duke. Duke, of course, started P15, will be very eager to find a way in. I don't know if he's going to be able to here for now as they come out to the right-hander and down to turn number 10. And, well, as they exit, Duke gets a better run there. Taylor, in the end, falls over himself out of turn number 10, just stumbles a little out of the corner. And there comes Duke then looking up the inside in towards the braking zone, but in the end backs out of it. 9. The turn 1's not where you want to make the move. It's turn 3. You want the run out of turn number 1, and that is where you can get the job done. And we're coming out 1, upwards towards 3. Is going to be now Duke's opportunity here versus Taylor, but will he be able to find the move? You can see Taylor going very defensive as they head into the Kinker 2, and this is all to settle that inside line into 3. Duke looking around the outside here, and McLaren there on the tighter line. It will stop just in time, so Duke in the end will go for what will be the cutback run out the corner. Can he find it? And the answer is no, he can't at this time. Made to wait his turn, but still there's a couple more turns to that attack that he can look for. As they head in towards turn number 4, onto the brakes they go once again, but no way through this time around. But speaking of ways through, looking a little bit further behind, Scott Costreet on the back of Jim Fox, and these two were fighting earlier. They fight each other once again now as they come on down the round, and as they roll on through, well, it's looking as though there right now it is going to be Costreet looking for that move on Fox, and absolutely on the move. But our drivers right now all pushing on as much as they possibly can, and will there be an opportunity here for what will be a Costreet to look to move in towards turn number 9? We'll have to wait and see as they roll on through and down into the next braking zone. I don't think so at this time as they make the way onwards towards what will be said turn 9 on your corner. It is all going to be an opportunity. As we do apologise, the overlay just briefly refreshing it, just a tiny bit of data being uploaded and corrected in the background. Still be able to forgive us for that, as we do have the overlay back immediately. As the tries to make the way up towards turn number 1, it's now going to be Costreet is absolutely on a charge here to try and take on Fox, but he's going to get a bit closer if he wants to make that move a reality. But from those drivers, we look a bit further down the order, down to P24 here, or P21 in the Premier Class, and this is to Denny Pluger, and Pluger right now with Ross Norsworthy and Adam Baker behind, all queuing up together. But we've also got a similar queue appearing in the EVO Class here, as this is none other than Rob Gregg, who was part of Edel Chowdhury a little while ago, about 7 laps ago, but since then the Rhino Academy driver hasn't really broken away, and if anything, they're all forming a nice orderly queue now behind Daniel Paul, and well, Paul being the P4 of the EVO Class here, trying to hold on for a little bit longer, all the way to that checker flag. 5 minutes or so left on the clock, and Brilliant Racing has absolutely been the dominant story here. As meanwhile, I'm hearing a bit of a story in my ear that Peter Duke has been involved in a bit of an incident further up the order. We will get a replay of what's happened there shortly. I believe Duke has dropped out from what's battle for the top 3 all the way down to what is the P7 off camera, but staying at transfixed. Oh, goodness me, what on earth has happened here? As everyone has to take evasive action, that's a car round, and that is a McLaren that's gone round of, I believe that's Pete Piper who's taken the long trip round at turn number 3, and well, I think turn number 3 has been the scene of a number of incidents so far in what has been at this lap, but what exactly has happened is the big question. Well, let's fill you in with a replay first of what happened to Peter Duke only minutes ago. And this was on the run down towards turn number 4, so in fact balanced side by side there, coming down to the braking zone. That was a P4, and contact between himself and the McLaren of what was, I believe, that was the McLaren of Jim Fox, unless I'm mistaken. I may be incorrect on that. In fact, that was Jim Fox, and that is what led, in fact, I think that was Craig Taylor there, but either way, that's what led to what Peter Duke ended up going around there, so a small tap, but then subsequently, what happened earlier on in that lap in terms of position, this was Pete Piper making his way up the hill, and in towards that braking zone they went, and well, what happened here to the McLaren driver? And a tap on the rear of the car from the number, what was there? Oh, goodness me, that was, I think, the number 82. And everyone queuing up, they're trying to essentially find a way around the McLaren, but the classic traffic jam was turn number 3, and well, many a driver falling victim to it, and all taking up brief bumps and shunts on the car. And well, that is going to be Piper making his way down the pit lane for a fast repair. There's some significant damage to the car. Not a happy driver will he be for now, but meanwhile, with 3 minutes left on the clock, let's come back to your race leader of the team, as the Romanian driver makes his way down out of turn number 6 in towards 7, And as he does so here, well, 1 second between himself, Aston and Taylor. It's a three-way fight all the way to the finish, and it was Craig Taylor's car who we saw in that instant with what was Duke only moments ago. You can see some damage on the front right bumper, front left from what is our cameraman's perspective there, but front right from the driver's perspective. Taylor trying to look for moves here, all the way down into the braking zone. He goes all in, does Taylor, and that is a very bold, it's an audacious move. And Craig Taylor, I think right now, feels as though he needs to get these moves done quicker than anybody else because he's got a lot of pace. He wants to trace down the team, but the problem will be here in the fact that he's still got what is a gap now, 1.7 seconds to close down. And well, Robin Aston, who's behind him in that Porsche 992, may not be feeling inclined just to simply let him go. And well, that is obviously going to be on the mind here. You can see why he's taken initially a quite tight line up into two, but then decides to naturally roll back onto the racing line here. Taylor feels safe now, and he can go hunting after Montine in what will be at this lap, plus one more when they cross that timeline and get to lap number 20 of 20 in what will be this 30-minute race. We won't get any more than 20 laps in this one, and therefore it's still a way to go. But right now Taylor has got to go some if he wants to try and make that victory a reality, because otherwise Andre Montine has led this race from the start. He's been under a lot of pressure, but he has not wilted to it, and that has been the delta between him and his rivals over the distance. But there's a long line of cars all forming up, and well, speaking of moves here, Fox going to go defensive versus Kostrich into what is turn number 6. Through left-hander they go, and well, Fox right now just staying ahead in that McLaren. The privateer McLaren looking comfortable versus the Porsche. Will be the 101, still looking for a bit of a move and trying to put a 101 in terms of overtaking opportunities here. And well, it's a very good run out. Turn number 7 in towards 8, however, finds the faithful of McLaren and can't carry that momentum any further forward, so they're going to wait. Meanwhile, Peter Duke takes a quick look to the inside there versus Dale Williams, but that Mercedes is going to be a very hard car to pass on the straights, given how strong it is on the straights versus where it is on the corners, and that's where Duke's going to have to make the attack. But coming out of the final corner to go on to the final lap of this race, which side by side for P4 between Fox and Kostrich. Kostrich in what is the fight for the Premier P4 position. They give door rubs there into turn 1, and will they give as good as they're going to get? And as they come out of the corner, well, Fox stays ahead for now, but Kostrich right there with him as they make the way through. It is very nip and tuck between them. Meanwhile, Taylor here under pressure from Aston into turn number 3, but in the end, the gap between the two of them is not going to be that significant, as we've got both Croft and also Tabbers into the pit lane. I believe that might be for a quick splash and dash of fuel, unless I'm mistaken, unless they picked up drive-through penalties, but I'm not aware of anything. And well, as the drivers make the way on down here, it's always coming towards the end of this race now in terms of the tipping point. And well, for your Evo leader, Robert Nobles in P13, he'll be feeling very happy with the races, how the race has played out with an 8-second gap over Mark Parkhurst, your second place Evo driver, who just clears at turn number 3 right now, and he in turn's got a 7-second gap over third place Evo driver Rob Gregg. But from them, we must come back towards what is your top 3 of the Premier class, and that's Taylor and Aston still giving chase to one another, with Craig Taylor holding on just about for now by the best part of which 4 attempts. They make the way onwards towards turn number 9, but this man in the foreground of the picture, as the clock strikes 30 minutes, well, the checker flag will call for him coming out of the final corner, and he will find that checker flag with glee, because after starting on pole for Andre Montine, it has been a flawless race, and it's flawless victory at the Red Bull Ring in race number 2 for the Romanian driver in the Acura, ahead of Craig Taylor P2. Robin Aston takes P3 ahead of Jim Fox P4. Scott Kostrich finishes off the top 5 ahead of Dale Williams and Peter Duke, with John Lebret P8, Mark DeVries P9, Nick Stubb P10, Henry Coulin in P11, best arrest ahead of James Hallworth, and then Robert Nobles will come on through to take what will be Evo victory in P13 overall. It's unlucky for some, but fortunate for him today in the number 22. What a drive there from Robert Nobles, Rob McKee, Janosberg, and then Mark Parkhurst will be your 16th place finisher, but P2 most importantly for him in the Evo class, in the end fending off the charge of his rivals. It'll then be Krista Starswell P17 as he crossed the line ahead of Adam Baker, with Ross Norsworthy and Denny Plugger completing your top 20 overall. Dominic Marquis P21 ahead of Matthew Croft and Danny Weir. Rob Gregg will then come through for the third place spot in the Evo class there in a solid drive, and it'll be Daniel Port and Sean Clark just behind him to complete the order after Paul having that altercation with Piper a bit later on. A bit of a nose to shunt back and forth. We've still got a few drives to finish their race, however. And as the drivers make the way on through, well, here's one of them, the Ford Mustang. This is none other than Jordan Zev Smith, as he makes his way around in the number 94 and down into the last couple of quarters. And well, a bit of a challenging race today for the Evo driver, challenging 2 races. Race number 1 involved in a major incident, and race number 2, it's just not played out with a late pit stop. But Zev Smith there will cross that line and take P7 in the Evo class. And then the last of our lead lap finishers will be Adil Chowdhury, who in the end had to come into the pit lane for a quick splash and dash after making so many places at the start. But sometimes it just doesn't quite quite go your way, and that really has been the story of the Verano Academy driver today. Mazmontin gradually picks up some rubber there on the outside and celebrates with some victory donuts. Well, without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, we head to the blimp camera, and he's enjoying himself, and let's go through those race results. And what a pair of races it have been. But here are the results then, and we'll, after a brilliant 30 minutes of racing in our second race of the day, or the fully fledged feature at the Red Bull Ring, Andre Montine taking that overall victory there for Z-Axis Sim Sports by 1.2 seconds over Craig Taylor for Lumen Motorsport. P3 went the way of Robin Aston for Suma GP2, with the privateer of Jim Fox in fighting hard for P4 and keeping Scott Kostic right at bay all the way to the end. The KM GP2 Porsche driver had to settle for P5, but was ahead of Vulcan Fasters by Glasstep Racing's Dale Williams, and it was Peter Duke P7 there for DDK Racing Team. He fought hard from P15 to P7, couldn't make that progress in the end, and an error as well, or a bit of contact we should really say down to turn 4 is what stopped him from being on the podium, but definitely Peter Duke has announced himself as potentially the favourite, or the early favourite in the Premier class based on his pace that he brought to the table today. But this is just one of what is 11 circuits on the calendar, and it's the next 10 that truly matter. This one doesn't count in terms of those points. But then it's John at Ludbrook P8 ahead of, for the KMGP Porsche driver, ahead of Sim Racing Team Lowlands' Mark De Vries, who in the Ferrari enjoyed a very entertaining race. I can imagine if he had a packet of crisps or popcorn in the car, he would have loved to have watched all the fighting in front of him. But to be fair to him, he also enjoyed some great fighting of his own. P10 behind him was Nick Stubb, fellow countryman from the Netherlands for Vulcan Fasters by Glasstep Racing. And in best of SPLM was Henry Coolan ahead of James Horworth. Horworth, of course, with DXT Motorsports, involved in some brilliant battling, as was Robert Nobles, your winner in the EVO class there, P13 overall. What a drive for the privateer, and I think he had more battling today with what was drivers of the Premier class than he did with his own class, but he won't be complaining at that because it's all good learning experience. Rob McKee was P14 for DXT Motorsports, had a Mark Parkhurst, who was your runner-up there in the EVO class for Z-Axis Sim Sports. And it was Christopher Starswell, P16, ahead of Adam Baker, with Ros Norsworthy, Denny Ploger, and Dominique Baquiz completing your top 20. Outside the top 20, we continue our way on down. P21 is Matthew Croft ahead of Danny Weir. And then for Moonshiners Racing Club, completing at the EVO podium, Rob Gregg there, P23. The top 5 of the EVO class was rounded off by Daniel Paul, P24, and Sean Clark, P25 for Flatline Racing and DXT Motorsports respectively. And then carrying on through to P26 was Sander Tabbers in a very quiet race too, compared to his very exciting race number 1, it must be said, and his teammate from Sim Racing Team Lowlands and Memo Blum, P27. Jan Östberg at P28 there, the Swede for Sheep Valley Racing, not having a happy race number 2 after a difficult race number 1. Really has been a baptism by fire today for his season 8. Ahead of Jordan Zev Smith. Your top 30 was completed by Eduard Chaudhry, and the Verano Academy driver being followed up there by Grant Miller, who was your last lead lap finisher. P32, it was Craig Tillerson, and then we did see the finishing order carry its way all the way through. A lap down as well there to Christian Malaskov, the Verano Academy driver behind his teammate. 3 laps down to Dean Sheesby and also Pete Piver. And then we did have the unfortunate retirements of Ricardo Luis Piera, also to was Mark Wesley, Klaas Velen, Gareth Newton, Liam Fraser, Jason Haddington, and Steve Rabuno. And I do believe those 3 are not able to take to grid for our second race. Coming on to the class finishing positions then, and of course we need to go through those, and as we can see, Andre Montine, your winner in the Premier class, first and foremost, as Axis Sim Sports ahead of Lumen Motorsports Craig Taylor, and Suma GP2's Robin Asner, pushing and huffing as puff as much as he could, but in the end not quite able to finish runner-up. Jim Fox missed out on the podium, but took a P4 in a slightly wounded McLaren at the end of the race. Ahead of Scott Kostic, who huffed and puffed as well in his own right to chase down P4, but he had to settle for P5. Dale Williams took P6 there in a Mercedes that was missed a front bumper, but its speed on the straights was sensational and kept it alive. And Peter Duke in the end settling for 7th, 9th today. Could have been back-to-back victories, but still, I think he knows all the information he needs. He's gained from today, and he'll head into our season open in a week's time with a few ace up his sleeve. John Ludbrook was P8 ahead of Mark De Vries, and Nick Stubb completed what was your top 10, with Henry Coonan P11 ahead of James Horsworth, and Rob McKee, Krista Starsmore, and Adam Baker completing the Premier top 15. Ros Northbury was P16 ahead of Denny Ploger, and then we did see Dominique Baquiz, Matthew Croft, and Danny Weir completing the top 20, and then it was Sander Tabbers P21 ahead of Memo Blum, and well, just outside the top 22, we did also have there Jan Östberg ahead of what was Craig Tillerson, who was a lap down, also a lap down to Christian Malaskov P25, and we did have Dean Sheesby 3 laps down, as was Pete Piver. And then we had the retirements of Ricardo Luis Piera and also Klaas Vielem, and the non-starts for Liam Fraser and Jason Haddington. Meanwhile, then coming to what was the EVO class, and as we do come to the EVO class there, we did see Robert Nobles taking that victory by just shy of 9.5 seconds with a brilliant, solid drive there in the Acura ahead of Mark Parkhurst with a Z-Axis Sim Sports driver. Enjoying some battling, but in the end, it was more focusing around holding on to his position with Rob Gregg a further 14 seconds back and finishing off the EVO podium. Daniel Paul was P4 ahead of Sean Clark, with John Zev Smith P6, and then it was Edel Chowdhury followed by Grant Miller, who completed your finishing order of the EVOs. It was unfortunately non-finishes for Mark Wesley and also Gareth Newton, and we did have the non-start for Steve Rubino. So after all that, ladies and gentlemen, what a pair of races, no doubt about it. Brilliant races from start to finish across what was our classes, and indeed overall, and that's what we do love to see. But of course, this broadcast may have ended in terms of its racing, but it's not over yet in terms of your entertainment. And coming up shortly, we do have some post-round interviews with our selected drivers. So don't go anywhere, because we will be back in approximately what will be 5 to 6 minutes time for those interviews, and we will see you very shortly to bring you all the input from our drivers themselves. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, it's time for us to get our post-round interviews underway. And we're going to be hearing from 3 of our drivers today, and that's going to be a common theme throughout what will be the season. And we're going to be kicking off with our Premier class drivers today, who was right at the front of the field in qualifying in race 1, but found himself struggling his way through the field in race number 2. And it's none other than James Horworth, and let's kick off with him. Good evening to you, James, and thank you for joining me in at the interview room. It's a pre-season, and in an absolutely big, bustling and bulky Ford Mustang, you look like you're enjoying it out there with a very strong qualifying points and a great race 1, but a race 2 where progress didn't seem to be too kind.
No, I ran the Mustang last season. I call it my little battle tank because it's just too heavy and wide. Race 1 went really well. I got a little fortunate of the spin of turn 2. Race 2, I got a little bit held up by Ross, but end of the day that's battling and trying to find a way around this tight little track, and cost me a few seconds, but all in all I'm quite happy with the pace at the minute.
Oh, most definitely. The pace is looking strong out there, and carrying on with the Mustang from the previous season, is there anything that you're potentially changing for this season with regards to your approach to the Mustang? Because we know setups can change from round to round and season to season.
Yeah, I'm focusing mainly on the wet because last season it was just like a record player and spinning around constantly. So I'm practicing more in the wet. I'm confident in the dry, so...
Well, that's absolutely fair. Confidence in the dry, but needing to make up a bit of a delta in the wet. There's always room for improvement, like they say. But coming a bit more back to today, I mean, we saw some brilliant battling between yourself and a number of drivers out there. But is there anybody who's particularly sticking out as a rival for this season, or a group of rivals?
Not particularly, because races and unfortunate incidents can vary from race to race. So I'm just going to qualify as high as I can, get into a nice rhythm early, and see where I place at the checker flag.
Well, straightforward approach to each and every race, and applying that to today, of course. I mean, qualifying in what was the P3 position, and having a very strong start to your race, no doubt about it. But as the distance went on, it looks like it was getting tougher and tougher out there. This Mustang does seem to be quite heavy on its tyres, at least at the Red Bull Ring.
It was worn, well, I wouldn't say it's worn on the tyres, it just takes a little bit longer to warm them up to get them to operate in temperature. And then once I got them into that little window, I was setting a rhythm comfortably and basically just letting the race come to me.
Well, sensible approach to let the race gradually come to you over time. And was there going to be more of the same in race number 2? Because it looked so there with the inverted top 15 grid, it wasn't quite easy for the results to come to you.
No, the reverse grid's always more challenging for us in the top half of the first race because there's always that threat of people spinning out in front of you, unfortunate incidents, etc., etc. And you've just got to time it, the overtakes and battles accordingly. So it's one of the many challenges of this league.
Indeed, but those challenges all need to be overcome. And looking ahead then to what is the league itself, are there any rounds in particular where you think we should be watching out for you first and foremost, or they could be your rounds where you could dominate the field, should we say?
Road Atlanta more possibly. Monza, I'm quite comfortable there. Mugello as well. That was my first ever race in ESR, and I was P2, which shocked me because I've only had iRacing for just about a year now. The ones that I'm not looking forward to is Le Mans, because that's just a wet race.
Fair play, and hopefully not looking to spin in circles at Le Mans, but then again, you never know what happens until you do get there. But just before we do let you go and appreciate the insights of what we could expect from you this season, is there anybody you'd like to give a shout out or a thank you to live on the broadcast this evening?
Obviously the ESR team for putting up this massive community and great standard of racing. Yourself for volunteering for the broadcasts. I know it's your first season, but you'll enjoy it as much as we will be racing it. And also my girlfriend Laura.
Well, I'm sure they all appreciate the shout out, especially Laura, none more than anybody else as your girlfriend. And also, I do appreciate the kind words that you've offered me there. I can tell you one thing, James, if the racing that you've demonstrated today is just an indication of what's to come this season, I'm already hooked and excited for the opening round, let alone what is the other 9 rounds that follow after that. But with that, we'll leave it there for now. Congratulations on your performances today, and thank you for joining me in the interview room. And we look forward to plenty more from you in the season opener in a week's time.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Walsh, and take care.
So hearing there from James Horworth, and what a day it has been for James today, in the fact that really having to learn a bit of a baptism by fire with regards to the fact moving on from season 7 into season 8, and talking about there really just letting the races come to him here at the Red Bull Ring. A very tactical and what is straightforward approach there, and also talking about his change in philosophy with regards to the Mustang, in the fact that focusing on this season, looking to dial it better for the wet conditions versus what has been at the dry conditions of previous seasons, and not looking forward to the wet race at Le Mans versus looking forward to performances at a much more sunny Road Atlanta. So it's going to be for the DXT Motorsports driver a season whereby it's all going to be about the charge and the raw grunt of that V8, and looking to carry on from where he left off in season number 7. And well, I'm sure he'll have the backing of the team behind him every step of the way. And well, we look forward to seeing what James Horworth can do over the distance in the Premier class. But then coming on to what is our second interview of the day, and we're going to be coming on to Robert Nobles very shortly. And well, let's get a word in with Robert as he gets himself set to talk to us on the fact that double victory today in what has been the Evo class. And well, hearing from the 2-time winner, let's get that word in now as he does join us in the interview room. Good evening to you, Robert. And well, firstly, allow me to say that if today was round number 1, that would be the biggest points injection you could ask for to start your season off. Back-to-back victories in the Evo class, but it's still pre-season, and still there's some bragging rights surely from this.
Oh yeah, a little bit. I mean, it was the least to be expected. Especially with the way it started out. Missing, I got a couple off tracks during quali, so started in the back, and then figured I was just gonna kind of take my time and see how it went, and I ended up before I knew it, I was in the lead.
Well, an absolutely fantastic pair of drives. And talking a little bit more about qualifying there, and the fact that a number of off-tracks scuppered your opportunity to get a valid qualifying lap in. In terms of that, how is it something perhaps to do with how you have to drive the Acura in order to get the most out of it? Just break it down why it was so difficult in qualifying.
Yeah, they're just trying to make sure that I'm trying to stay on the limit, and then I just kind of tend to overdrive it a little bit. So the Acura, it's a easy car to kind of drive, but it's an easy car to overdrive as well too.
Easy to drive, easy to overdrive, so therefore you've got to find that Goldilocks zone, as they say. And whilst in qualifying you couldn't quite find it, in the races you did. And race number 1, we saw you just gradually pick your way through, albeit there were a few incidents, but also some overtakes you had to make on track, including past 2 very determined Porsches of Mark Parkhurst and Rob Gregg.
Oh yeah, that they were not making it easy on me for sure. Definitely had to kind of pick and choose where I wanted to place the car, so that not to create too many incidents. As you saw, there was a lot of incidents in the race, and so as long as you kind of keep it going straight, you're gonna make a lot of ground.
Well, definitely made a load of ground in race number 1 and found your way through. Then coming on to race number 2, no inversion of your qualifying position in was the Evo class, because all Evo drivers were outside the top 15. Firstly, I just have to ask, how do you feel about that change to the rules going from a top 18 inversion to a top 15? Is it something that perhaps you think, oh darn it, now I've got to work a little bit harder to get myself into a potential reverse grid pole position?
So actually, this is my first season here with ESR, so I didn't experience the top 18 reverse. So I do want to keep pushing a little bit harder, because that is definitely a goal, is to get into that top 15 and to show that the Premier guys, that these Evo guys can mix it up with them.
Well, that's definitely a great goal to have in mind, and we look forward to see you attempt to achieve that goal over the course of the season. And in race number 2, speaking about enjoying the company of the Premier drivers, I mean, you spend the vast majority of the race, I think, looking from one side to the other and finding Premier drivers were left, they were right, they were in front, behind. I mean, you probably didn't know whether you should battle or not at some points.
That was the thing that was playing in my head. Should I push them harder, or should I allow them to go? Kind of towards the end of the race, I didn't. I kind of wanted to just make sure I brought the car home safely, and so I ended up backing up a little bit, allowing James to get around me. But it was just great battling with everybody. Just fantastic time.
Oh, 100%. And we absolutely love to see you run it rampant out there. And in the end, taking what's that P13 oval and victory in race 2 of 2. So looking ahead now into your first season in the Evolution Sim Racing GT3 Championship, we've got 10 rounds ahead. Are there any in particular that call out to you, this is my coming?
No, I kind of went into this openly, just trying to see where I would stack up with everybody. I honestly didn't have the highest hopes. I thought I was going to be quite down towards the bottom. This is kind of like a good surprise, and so we'll see what's in store for the rest of the season.
Well, we look forward to seeing what you're able to achieve over the season. Like you say, a welcome surprise today, but is it going to be a surprise as the season goes on? We'll have to see. But just before we do let you go, Robert, is there anybody you'd like to give a shout out or a thank you to live on the broadcast?
Just everybody over here at the league here for putting this on. You for putting on a great broadcast. I want to put a shout out to Sim Racing Nation, the organization that has brought me in, got me this great livery for this beautiful car, and everybody that's helping me out knock down the lap times.
Well, Robert, it's an absolute pleasure to have you join me in the interview room this evening. Congratulations again on the double victory. A surprise, but a welcome one to be sure. And will it continue that way going into the season open in a week's time? We'll have to wait and see, but we'll definitely see you there.
All right, thank you. Bye.
So hearing it there from Robert Nobles, and well, an Evo driver today who really did put on a Premier performance, and talking about the welcome surprise there with regards to taking back-to-back victories with race 1, everything coming his way, but having to work hard for it and fight hard versus the Porsches at the front of the Evo class field, and talking there about Mark Parkhurst and Rob Gregg. But also before that in qualifying, not able to find that Goldilocks zone of pushing too hard versus keeping things cool in qualifying, and ending up with those off tracks that cost him dear. But sometimes, you know what, when you've got these pre-season races, it's better to start from the back because you get the greatest learning experience out of them. And then he was able to carve his way through in race number 1 to take the class victory. And in race number 2, it was all about battling with the Premier drivers from start to finish and enjoying it every step of the way, but also looking to conserve the car at the end. And I do like Robert's attitude there, and I think that attitude could bode in good stead when we do go green flag racing and raise the curtain formally for season 8 next week. But has he announced himself as an early favourite? Quite possibly. We'll have to wait and see if that momentum carries forward, and if it does, well, could we have found our privateer who could be the domineering factor in the Evo class. But ladies and gentlemen, we've still got one more interview for this evening, and well, it is my pleasure to bring you back to the Premier class, and we're going to be hearing very shortly from none other than Rob McKee, who gets ready to join me in the interview room. In fact, he joins me now, and as he joins me in the interview room, Rob, good evening to you, and what a mixed evening it's been for yourself this evening. A qualifying session that put you at the bottom end of the top 10 overall, race number 1 that saw you charge your way all the way into P4, and then a race number 2, well, it didn't quite work out in the bottom end of the top 15. I mean, it's been back and forth, but I think you've had a lot of fun tonight.
Oh, absolutely. Tonight has been one of my best races in ESR, just from an enjoyment point of view. The racing all through the grid tonight with a lot of new drivers who haven't been in the league before. It's been great. There's been brilliant battles up and down the order as I went up and down the order in race 2.
Oh, unquestionably. And breaking it down a little bit, in fact, let's take a step back and talk about your car choice this season. The McLaren 720S Evo, a car which, when we watched you at certain points this evening, you showed that you can make it go as quick in a straight line as you can make it drift around the corners, something which it's good at doing. But why have you gone for the McLaren?
Oh, I've ran the McLaren for the last 2 seasons since it was released on iRacing, and originally I ran it because the livery that was designed for me was, I want to say close to my heart, but that's going to sound really bad when I explain that it was all around Hawkston Lager. Had Jeremy Clarkson's face on it, had speed and power on the inside of the sun strip, Jeremy on the back corner doing the L for loser. So anyone who was behind me just got to look at Jeremy calling him a loser. But I did fall in love with the way the car drove. Yes, it likes to drift. I've managed to work out how to get the most out of drifting it. It looks great, and that's the main thing for me at the minute. It looks great when it's on stream going semi-sideways round the corner, and it accelerates nicely out of the corners. It's really well planted, and the setups I'm running, they suit the car really nicely.
Well, it definitely seems to suit yourself, and thank you for the backstory there, the explanation as to why you've gone with the McLaren. I love that theme coming from the Jeremy Clarkson story, but still, coming from Clarkson to class here in terms of racing. I mean, qualifying a P9 at the Red Bull Ring, it was tight out there, but it looked as though excluding a bit of an anomalous what was driver of Peter Duke at the front of the field, it was very close to being inside that top 10.
It was. The lap times were really tight tonight. It's sort of exaggerated by Red Bull track being quite a short track, only officially 10, but really 9 corners. So there's not too many places to lose time. But yeah, the field definitely looking really tight over this season now.
Well, it's a tight field, like you say, in qualifying, and that always leads to some good racing. Race number 1, we saw you carve your way all the way up to 4th place. I mean, obviously, there's nothing on the line other than some bragging rights, but it looked so there you were throwing everything at race 1 to get yourself up to the front.
Yeah, I also used a bit of team or sister team orders using the Red Bull Racing Bulls strategy. I said to James I could use a little bit of a tow because about 5 minutes in, my auto fuel was saying I was going to be 2 litres short of making the end, so I asked James just to lift a little and give me a tow to try and save a bit of fuel, which I didn't expect him to do. I only said it jokingly on the voice chat, but he did drop back and give me that tow and help me make it to the end, and we just worked together to maintain the position we had on track.
Well, bit of teamwork makes the dream work, and in race number 2, looked as though there, meanwhile, the top 15 inverted, it wasn't easy to make that much progress. When you did, though, it very quickly it turned into a bit of regress with even more battling. I mean, it was coming and going left and right. You didn't know probably where you finished at the end until you saw the results.
Yeah, I got tagged in turn 1, lap 1, and ended up half sideways, but managed to keep it sort of pointing in the right direction, and those coming through behind managed to avoid me being a little bit stuck in the middle of the track. And then it was just try and go into recovery mode. Picked up a few good battles, had quite a long run with Robert, who won the EVO. Was behind him for a while, got past, and then going into turn 5, I was offline trying to get past another car, and yeah, the back came round a little bit more than I was hoping, and I was sideways, but got it onto the grass out of the way of the rest of the pack coming through. Managed to recover back onto track, and then it was just make the best of where I am, see what else I can pick up. A couple of people had their own incidents ahead and picked up a few more places. So I'm still, even though it wasn't the best race, it was good fun fighting in the mid-pack with everyone in race 2.
Oh, without a doubt. We love to see you fighting in amongst the mid-pack. But of course, The only thing on the line today was a little bit of pre-season showmanship, and also some bragging rights, and also seeing where you fit in amongst the rest of the field. But now let's come on to the next 10 weeks. We've got 10 rounds. Are there any in particular where you feel as though, you know what, that is my round and that is where I'm going to be the strongest?
There's one round I'm going to have to say is going to be that round, and that's purely down to boss man, Mr. Bostock, bigging it up in the European GTC on Sunday, and that's Le Mans, because I don't know what it is about that track. It's one I could probably drive blindfolded, and every time we've raced there in ESR, I've had good, solid results. So that's the one track I am really looking forward to. Unfortunately, because of holidays in a couple of months, I'm going to be missing 2 weeks. So I know we get one drop round. So the points from one of those missed races won't count, but I'm going to have to miss a second race as well. So my season is going to be trying to make the most out of every round possible.
Well, it's definitely going to be a bit of an uphill battle for you, but I'm sure it's one that you'll rise to, and we look forward to seeing what will be an absolute charge at Le Mans, no doubt about it. But just before I do let you go, Rob, is there anybody you'd like to give a shout out or a thank you to live on the broadcast?
Got to give a shout out to the DXT team and the drivers in there, James and Danny tonight representing, but there'll be more come the season opener, and we've got some in the A split as well. I have to give credit on the livery. Danny made the livery come to life, but the livery that's on the car was actually designed by my son. And it's the theme for myself, Danny, and Alex, who's also driving with us. We've all got cars that our kids have done the design work for. And then Danny's done the hard work of taking what was drawn on a bit of paper and making it a reality for iRacing.
Well, that's absolutely brilliant. I'm loving that story. Well, I love the story earlier about your choice of the McLaren, and even more so with the story behind the liveries for the DXT Motorsports teams. I mean, I can tell you one thing. I'm not allowed to have favourites, but I'm sure you've already gathered a few fan favourites in what is at the YouTube chat there with that story. And Rob, I must say, I do love the livery on the car, indeed the team's cars. But with that, we're going to have to leave it there. We'll leave you to it. Thank you for joining me in the interview room this evening. Well done on the results day, and we look forward to plenty more in next week's season opener.
No worries. Thank you for doing the comms. I'm looking forward to watching tonight's stream back in full.
Well, till then, Rob, all the best.
See you later.
So here and there from our final interview of the evening, ladies and gentlemen, Robert McKee, and well, plenty of stories there behind the scenes, whether it be behind why he's in the McLaren, alternatively the livery on the car, and I do love that, the fact that his son designed the livery, and then Danny Weir, the livery manager for what appears to be the DXT Motorsports team, bringing it to life there, and it's all a big family, a friend and team effort. And also the stories they're talking about is races and a bit of misfortune in what was race number 2, but race number 1 definitely picking up the pieces, and also a little bit of teamwork there to make sure he didn't run out of fuel. He's going to be a driver to watch out for, no doubt about it, with the fast charge he's made, and also feels as though Le Mans is going to be at the number 1 place where he should be able to lead the way. He reckons he can drive the circuit blindfolded. Not that I would encourage him to race blindfolded. I think he'll want to use with both eyes open, particularly given the fact he's going to have to miss 2 rounds this season, and therefore you have to use his drop score, plus also have a 0 round, so therefore every point is going to matter even more for our 117 driver. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes our interviews for today. We heard, firstly, from the Premier classes, James Horworth in the 154 for DXT Motorsports. We then heard from the 22 of Robert Noble, splitting things up there, the privateer in the EVO class, with double victories there, an absolutely brilliant pair of drives. And then we just heard from the 117 of Robert McKee and the DXT Motorsports Premier class driver, bringing us all to a close there with an absolutely lovely interview. Congratulations to all 3 drivers on their performances, and a huge, huge thank you to them for joining me in the interview room. And of course, we'll be speaking to 3 of our drivers after each and every round each week, and we'll be getting different stories from up and down the grid, whether it be race winners all the way through to drivers who've had a difficult day in the office. They're all welcome to join us in the interview room, because every driver has got a story to tell in Split B of the Season 8 of the GT3 Championship. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, it is now time for us to wrap up. Firstly, we'd like to say a big thank you to you all for tuning in. And if you are interested in being on the grid at Evolution Sim Racing, particularly on the iRacing Simulator platform, well, there's multiple series and championships you can get involved in. Of course, we do have on the Thursday evening the GT3 Championship, which I believe is fully booked, but there are reservations available in terms of you can put yourself on the reserve list, and that running every Thursday. And we're going to be bringing you all the action live from Split B, week in, week out. We also do have on Sunday evenings the newly introduced European GT3 Championship, the new season of it, I should say, and that's if you're looking for something on Sunday evenings. Alternatively, we also do have the Danny Lee Porsche Cup, or the DLPC, and that is brought in partnership with Danny Lee, the famous iRacing YouTuber, indeed one of the #1 individuals to go to if you're looking for a true story on how a driver's risen from rookie to pro. Danny Lee's story there is definitely a highly inspirational one, and that being brought in collaboration with Danny Lee and also GT Omega on Sunday evenings as well. Alternatively, if you're just looking for a free league to join, a more casual league, well, did you know every Tuesday evening and Saturday at 4 p.m. we do have our practice league as well at Evolution Sim Racing. So there's never been a better time to be on the grid at Evolution Sim Racing, or ESR. But of course, as well as being on the grid, we do need to give a special mention and to what is our sponsors and also our partners. And as we see here, we'd like to say a big thank you to our sponsors, who do include Trophy AI, VRS, the Virtual Racing School, Came Modern Technology, and also the GP2 Group. And also we'd like to give a big shout out to Motorsport UK's esports division, of which we are a recommended community here at Evolution Sim Racing, as we continue to foster our relationship with the Premier esports division of Motorsport UK. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, our attention turns then from the pre-season show off to what is raising up the curtain for me, because in a week's time, on Thursday, the 3rd of April 2025, we head to the United States of America for the mecca of road racing, the revival place of road racing in the United States of America, and it will be in the US state of New York at Watkins Glen International, where it all comes to life, and we see the first points put on the board for our Split B drivers in both the Premier and the EVO classes. Who shall shine high in the US of A? We'll tune in a week's time to find out then, but until then, we have been Evolution Sim Racing. I've been your host and commentator, Paul Walsh, also known as TX1 depending on what media follow me on, and until next time, remember to stay safe, stay well, stay smiling, and most importantly, as always, ladies and gentlemen, remember to stay on track. Good night.
For the upcoming right-hander, brake 30 meters later and ease off the pressure.
Are you spending a lot of time looking for setups and struggling for faster lap times? Are you tired of searching online for answers? Would you like to get setups, analysis and tutorials from some of the best sim racers in the world, like Raul Falla, Mitchell de Jong, Martin Krunker, Josh Rogers and many more? If so, virtualracingschool.com is the answer you've been looking for. VRS data packs provide hot laps from our professional coaches for you to analyse and replicate. They provide tutorials that walk you through the fastest laps and what the pros did to achieve the best times. And they provide the setups you need to ensure your car is competitive in both oval and road racing. If you're ready to get faster and reach more podiums sooner than later, just go to virtualracingschool.com and sign up for a free account today.